So, Mayuk, should we start? We have 35 people now.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So, a very good morning to all of you, and welcome to the day one of this 4-day series on living with the wild. And thank you for joining. I understand there have been a lot of registrations, and a lot of people from across the country have joined in for these 4 days. I'm sure these 4 days are going to be very fruitful for everyone to discuss about a very pertinent topic about human wildlife conflict and how there have been successful interventions to mitigate such conflict, especially with respect to community involvement. Before I get on to the actual session, just have some instructions, some basic Zoom ethics, which I'm sure most of you would already be aware of, considering that we have been attending Zoom meetings for the last 3 or 4 months in the Corona lockdown. All of you have been muted, and you'll remain so, considering there are many participants. In case you have any questions, you can always put it on the chat window that you can see at the bottom next to the share screen. You can direct the question to the particular speaker, or if you have a general question, you can mention it there. We will open the sessions for discussions and taking up participants' questions twice, once after the plenaries and once in the end, when all the three speakers, invited speakers, have finished talking. Uh, uh, in the meantime, I would add during every speaker when they're talking, you can keep posting your questions on the chat room, and the speakers may also choose to respond to your questions directly on the chat. Your videos can be on and off depending on what you are comfortable with, but the audios will be muted. In case you need to make a comment uh, verbally, you can raise your hand, and if time permits, and if it's a pertinent comment, we'll try and accommodate those things. We want to stick to the time, especially when we are doing Zoom meetings and all. Maintaining time is sometimes a little difficult. So we have a few of our people from WTI who will keep tagging us whenever we are. So, without further ado, I would like to start this session, and I would like to call upon Dr. Rahul Kaul, who is the Vice President and Chief of Conservation of Wildlife Trust of India. He's been working for over 20-25 years, specializes in pheasants, and is currently looking after the Human Wildlife Conflict Division of Wildlife Trust of India. Rahul, sir? Rahul, sir, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Thanks, Abhishek. We begin a very important series of talks, and which is very contemporary. That's human-wildlife conflict. And today's topic is living with elephants. I neither claim to be an expert on human-wildlife conflict, and neither on elephants. But by virtue of my association with this division in WTI, and also by being the host, I would like to share some of my thoughts on this subject. Generic though, but they might offer some pointers to the discussions that you might want to have over the next 4 days. During my growing up days in Kashmir, I was fortunate to basically have ample opportunities to spend in the forests. And even then, I remember very clearly that, especially in late summers and in the nights, local villagers would create a huge noise. They would sound their canisters and light torches and create a lot of noise just to keep the bears off their corn. And this would invariably happen. But then it was considered like a normal thing to happen, and this was not an issue. And so really, what has changed that this kind of a non-issue and a very local issue, what has happened since I grew up, that it has now become an issue. I would want to list out a few points which might actually have contributed to uh, this increase in conflict or the perception of increase in conflict. One, of course, is that as our human population in India has grown from at the time of independence, we were about 350 million. And look where we are today, 1.38 million, which is about 400% increase. So obviously, this population has to live somewhere, and this is all at the cost of cities expanding, wilderness areas declining, and also the second change that has happened is the forest cover has declined massively. Uh, I tried to look up sources to tell me how much we have lost, how much forest cover we have lost since independence. I was not able to. But one source that I could tap was Global Forest Watch. It says in the last decade, since 2010, India has lost nearly 1.8 million hectares, or 4.6% of tree cover. India's, and out of that, 115,000 hectares is natural forest. So, what has it caused? It has caused degradation. It has caused fragmentation, and that has resulted in a higher, larger interface for humans and wildlife, and probably leading to increased instances of conflict. Now, in the last 50 years, since our Wildlife Protection Act came into being, we have done extremely well. We've now have about 870 PAs, which is 4.93% of our geographic area. And despite holding a landmass of 2% globally, we still hold about 8% of our world's biodiversity, despite holding a 20% human population. So I'd say that, so in terms of protection, in terms of protection for wildlife, we have done extremely well. And indicators are, our main flagships like the tiger. We seem to have kept our St. Petersburg promise. There's been a doubling of tigers. Elephants have increased, rhinos have increased, and I know there have been losses as well. Lesser animals we have lost, but larger animals and animals that seem to be causing conflict have increased. Now, with all this, our tolerance towards wildlife seems to have reduced. And again, as I remember as a child, bears used to come invade orchards, take apples of the trees, or even cherries of the trees, and that was again considered at that time a given. Without too much fuss. That was a loss that the farmer had written off as a loss, and probably as an offering to the god or whatever. But that no longer holds true. And really, if you look at tolerance, our society has become less tolerant towards a lot of other things. And so why should we expect our society to be tolerant towards wildlife? Of course, the input costs for a farmer have increased manifold. Land holdings have become smaller, and therefore, any small portion of a crop loss is probably a big loss for the farmer. Therefore, intolerance is expected. I think another change that has happened over the last, through my growing years, is that people seem to have, at least people who are in conflict, they seem to have lost that touch of living with the wild. Now, is it because of a push towards urbanization? Is it children going to school and not into the forests? But is it also a lot of migrant population who are non-natives have come and settled down around the fringes. Uh, but there seems to be an issue where people do not know how to deal with wild animals when they have to. Economically, we seem to have made much progress. India is now I don't know, $2 to $3 trillion economy. But all that hasn't seeped into the areas where we want to see, and maybe that's why people are still dependent on forest resources. Uh, I know it's a free resource, and studies have shown that even if people have substantial money, as long as the free resource is available, they'll still avail of it. But but uh, but in certain societies and certain communities, the forest dependence or the annual income on forest-based resources could be as high as 40 to 50%, which is really a huge uh, proportion. And of course, then people will take the risks of going and look at what's happened in Sundarbans, for instance. People know that there's danger lurking inside, yet the the benefits that they see from is are too high to basically they offset all the risks that there might be. Communication has played its role. When we started, this was in 2006. We did a small study for J&K government to look at why leopard and bear conflict has suddenly increased in the state, and so it became a political issue. So at that time, we felt that one of the reasons was that the local media had become suddenly very active, and they were taking these issues seriously, because there was a proliferation of local newspapers, and therefore they needed news, and therefore uh, this became a news for them. But now with social media, any local event, it doesn't take time to become an international event by just one click of a button. So I think that also has created uh, I wouldn't say a false perception, but it has boosted knowledge, international knowledge of the event. So so this combination of 6, 7 changes that I'm sure there'll be others, but these 6, 7 changes that have happened uh, since the time I remember to now, uh, makes it a very dangerous mix for conflict or its perception to prevail. And in absence of a central policy towards conflict, I think this is something that is bound to happen. So therefore, what do we have? Uh, we have tigers killing people. For instance, in the last decade, around 390 people have been killed by tigers, 90 alone in West Bengal. On the other side, 42 tigers have died in India due to unnatural causes other than poaching. So things happening on both sides. Uh, Between 2007 to 2014, 380 elephants have died, and the number of humans who have died during this period is 1,832. So of course there are losses on both sides. We went to the ministry some 3, 4 years back to talk about conflict of tigers and elephants and all, and they told us no, talk about nilgai and wild pig, and that is where we face a problem. Tiger ka problem nahi hai. The elephants is not a problem, but the farmers, because probably is a political issue, and the losses suffered by the farmers are huge from nilgai and wild pigs. So that is also a cause for concern. Monkeys has been a very long-standing problem. Nobody seems to know how to solve it. So I'm sure there are other forms of conflict. Snakes nobody talks about, but there are other animals also that locally cause problems. So how has, as per our knowledge, and a very generic kind of a response, so how is the forest department managing it? Uh, so the most, and see the forest department very largely deals with conflict in a post hoc manner, as after the event has been done. There's very little the forest department actually does or invests in trying to reduce the possibilities of conflict. So the most favorite and of course most important measure that the forest department takes is ex gratia, which is relief basically. So although it's very important because it offers some solace to an aggrieved family, uh, but it really can't be a standalone solution. Ex gratia is a kind of a band-aid, but it has to be coupled with with other solutions, be it habitat recovery, be it uh, looking at looking at prey augmentation, and such like. So although we pay out a huge amount of money, uh, I don't think we are looking at actually trying to actively reduce conflict. Uh, One figure I have for elephants between 2007 and 14, I think the government paid over 22 crores as ex gratia for human loss to elephants, and over 115 crores for property loss, which includes crop loss due to elephants. So it's a huge amount of money that we are paying, but without trying to really see how we can reduce or how we can preempt this conflict. The other solution that the forest department seems to follow is removal of problem animals. Now, this is probably the easiest because it appears that removing an animal from a problem animal is basically will solve the problem, but it's not the soundest. And I'm sure in the next 3-4 days, uh, Vidya will talk about why this is not the soundest. Uh, there were news items. Maharashtra government is planning to move 50 tigers somewhere, and as a response to increased human carnivore conflict. Now, again, there are question marks raised against this technique or this solution. You might There might be temporary relief from where the tigers have been removed, but it's only a matter of time because if conditions remain the same, uh, there'll be, instead of 50, there'll be 70 tigers more in that area. So it's largely been seen, conservation translocation is largely seen as something that augments a population or repopulates an area. So therefore, unless they do something about the prey there, I don't think this is I think this is going to be a non-starter. The forest department in some places have erected barriers, which seem to have worked. Of course, barriers like solar powered fences, which do require a lot of maintenance and a lot of you see a lot of power fences that are in shambles because of they have not been maintained properly, and you'll have you will have seen them in a state which is in complete disrepair. Uh, but if they can be maintained, it could be probably a good solution. Nylon netting, for instance, in Sundarbans, has proven quite useful. There are trenches against elephants, plantations, and so on and so forth. So the forest department is experimenting with these barriers. But I think, again, the role of communities there is key. Now, some NGOs are working with the forest departments to assist in providing local community-driven solutions. It has just started, and this is happening at a very localized level. Uh, and I'm sure in the next 4 days we shall hear a lot more about this. And it is this that needs to be brought on a larger canvas. Of course, solutions are can be local and area specific, but wherever possible, these solutions can be adopted by other people also and other states also. So what more can we do? Really, I think the first thing that I think, and I'm sure there are lots of definitions about conflict, but should we be worried about animal movements into human settlements, which constitutes conflict, or should we also be concerned about people going into the forest and getting killed as a result or getting injured as a result? Because that is happening in Sundarbans, for instance. People go and collect honey, people go and collect prawns inside the forest, and face this risk of getting killed. Now, even a licensed person, perhaps going in and getting killed, is marked as a human wildlife conflict. So should we be marking conflict in areas which are forested and where chances of encounters are high? So that is something that we need to figure out, what conflict is and what should we be marking as conflict. Now, second thing I feel is community-driven solutions should be made more popular. See, they are more lasting because they have local appeal, they have local acceptance, and therefore they are sustainable in the long run. These are also preemptive and therefore actually may stop conflict from occurring rather than being reactive. In some parts, low cost fences have become very effective, and farmers have adopted it. We have tried these in Maharashtra, and they seem to have worked pretty well. And if the community is involved with providing and securing their farmland with a very low cost fence, then that could be one way of trying to reduce crop depredation and conflict with ungulates. Now, the fourth one that I have is, as I said, we have done pretty well in increasing our wildlife populations. So we have embarked on this journey, but do we know where to stop? This is, I know it's a controversial subject, but do we know how many enough? How many tigers do we need? How many elephants do we need? I think a discussion on this, discourse on this should at least begin so that we can devise a strategy on how to deal with conflict, because otherwise every state is looking at their own small piece of land and how to protect it. So should we be looking at population management? There are some cases where, for instance, in case of wild pigs, in case of nilgai, for instance, they have been declared vermin in certain cases. So, I mean, killing is not the only solution to population management. We're also looking at, there was again a news item where they are looking at options of sterilization and contraception in case of tigers. There are also other ways of passive management. Reduction in prey, for instance, is one very important and clear idea. Reduce prey, especially the artificial prey that we have in Maharashtra. That could go a long way in actually controlling population. So really, in the end, I do feel very strongly that if conflict is to be managed effectively and long term, the community-driven solutions are the way to go. And if this is made popular and institutionalized, what will it do is that trust deficit, which is huge between forest departments and local communities, that will improve. So it will basically benefit other government, local community relationship as well. Now, this planned program for the next 4 days is therefore very much important, and it provides a window into what is being done at the local levels and with community support, and to develop ideas of how it might be made useful and widespread. Now, so to demonstrate this, we have an extremely rich and eclectic mix of researchers, practitioners, and conservationists and forest officers who have immense knowledge and experience, and I would like to thank each of them to have agreed to become a part of this event and share your experiences. I would also like to thank Virat, who we have had the pleasure of working with before also, who has come on board and helped with putting up this show together. And of course, our team from WTI, Abhishek, Mayuk, Ragini providing comm support and the IT support for their help. So in the end, really, before I leave, I am extremely glad and happy to introduce a long-term friend and your next speaker, Dr. Dhananjay Mohan. As you know, Dr. Dhananjay is by profession a forester, but at heart, he is an ornithologist, for which he obtained a doctoral degree. While his stint in Uttarakhand, Dr. Mohan also got an opportunity to manage leopard-human conflict, also involving communities. Dr. Dhananjay is presently director at WII, and I would invite now Dr. Dhananjay to give you his talk, which is why communities are important to manage conflict. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Dhananjay.
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, yes sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rahul Kaul, and all the organizers, Mayuk, Virat, and everybody at WTI for giving me this opportunity. And I also want to congratulate all of you for having thought of this. 4 days of discussion on a very important subject. In fact, if you ask me from the perspective of the political leadership, local people, perhaps the most important thing which bothers them in our sector, that is the wildlife conservation sector. So really very thoughtful of you to have planned this, and I'm really looking forward to this wonderful discussion taking place over the next 4 days. I look at it as an opportunity also for all our listeners to get to know more about the human-wildlife conflict and the the subtle things that often get missed out, because most of the people actually develop their opinions and all based on media, because that's the only way they can, for a large majority of people, that's the only way they can get to know about things. So maybe this is also an opportunity to clear some of the myths that are there. And I recollect of the lovely handout that we had made while dealing with the leopard conflict. Of course, it had a collation of a lot of other handouts that were done earlier, busting the myths. And that was all about the myths about human-wildlife conflict and behavior of certain problem species. So I think this is a great opportunity for that, because very often, even in the media, you get a kind of a biased coverage. Often the main issues in human-wildlife conflict are not covered that seriously than certain more catchy, more glamorous subjects. Maybe a issue relating to tigers straying out will get a much more coverage than people in remote parts of Uttarakhand getting killed or mauled by black bears, or even people regularly losing their crops to wild animals. So, I mean, that's the way things are. I mean, the coverage can never be uniform. It's all often dependent on the location, species. So I think these 4 days can be very, very important for a whole lot of people who are going to join this, to know much more about the human-wildlife conflict and also know how they can perhaps contribute to it. There are umpteen examples where people from the civil society have contributed in dealing with this conflict. And I think more and more people need to join hands to deal with this very serious problems, which actually not only affects the local economy or the livelihood of people, but even their lives. So it's a very serious problem, and I'm really thankful to WTI team for having invited me today. I have a small presentation, actually, just a few slides, just so that what I talk remains in a course, in a proper course. So if you allow, I can just share that.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, I hope it's visible now.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Just to start with, I've picked up a few very basic things and certain interesting twists to that as well. For example, the very, in a way, definition, you can say, it talks about the negative impact on people because of wild animals, but I've also put the negative impacts of people on wild animals or their habitats. So human-wildlife conflict is actually a two-way thing, and it keeps interacting. These two conflicts keep interacting, resulting in the overall negativity. Another thing, very important thing, is that human-wildlife conflict is something that is not happening today. It's been happening, I think, through the history. And only thing that has been changing is the perception about it, the importance given to it, and that actually is linked to the overall governance that we have in our country. And of course, things may not be very different in other parts of the world. Of course, the way people deal with these problems in most of the countries is very different from the way we do it in India. So we'll talk about it later, of course. And this publication, of course, there are very few publications which are actually giving good data on human-wildlife conflict, because actually the data is all spread and it's very difficult to actually collate it. I gave it a try. I mean, from about 2013 to about 2018, about 5 years, I was in the thick of wildlife management in the state of Uttarakhand, one of the states which has a pretty serious wildlife conflict, human-wildlife conflict. So I saw the difficulties of dealing with this data besides other things. So Anand and Radhakrishnan, in their publication in 2017, tried their own way, where they actually tried to get data from the internet through internet searches. So anyway, but what they came up with was that the intensity perhaps is not escalated, but I mean, perhaps the perception has. So I've just picked up a couple of this visual from this figure from their paper, and which actually gives you the number of, I think, number of human deaths and injury in over the years, and it doesn't really show any trend. And you can also make out that there's some issue about data, because you see that recent years 2007 to 11, suddenly the human deaths have almost come to zero, whereas the human injury has shot up. So this shows the data itself is very poor. But I will take you to the next slide, which is the real data from Uttarakhand. And this is actually the number of human deaths that have occurred because of human-wildlife conflict from 2000 to 2018. So as you can see here, it's actually, it does show a slight increase, but overall, it's not a very sharply rising trend. There have been ups and downs that we would expect in anything, because there's bound to be a fair amount of stochasticity in this. And so you can make out that perhaps the perception is that it has really increased many folds, but that's not the case. I mean, if you take this, just this as a indicator or surrogate of the overall human-wildlife conflict problem. So, but I think a lot of things, other things have changed because of this changing perception that the conflict has grown many times. I think today, I would, maybe it may sound like a slightly harsh statement, I think the human life is far more valued in India than it used to be many decades back. So that's part of the reason. And then another thing is that actually we can feel it. I mean, I've been working with the government for now 32 years. So I have seen that change happening during my career. I think the governance has actually reached the grassroots. We can always find a lot of problems about the way governance is done and all, but this change has been very visible. I think people 30 years back had very little access to I mean, little access for their problems in the government, but today things have much changed. I think it is really, and that's also part of the reason why these problems seem so big today, because these problems are actually raised properly in the in front of the government, in front of other stakeholders. So this perception, if the perception is that the human-wildlife conflict has increased, there are many reasons behind it. So, but nonetheless, since human-wildlife conflict deals, I mean, this is something which links directly to the safety of human beings, their very lives. So even if the numbers are low, or they are constant, or they are declining, it will continue to be a very important problem, and it should rightly be a very important problem. So sorry. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about, the very perception about human-wildlife conflict. And those in the government, and particularly dealing with this problem, they know the pressures of dealing with this problem. I can again give you the example of my own state, Uttarakhand, where I worked. So there, I think every assembly session used to be rocked by questions and all kinds of Dhyanaakarshan Prastav or Niyam, urgent discussions under such and such rule, and all kinds of things. But this used to be always in every assembly session. It used to be the one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest. In most of the assembly session, I would say that perhaps it used to be the biggest issue to be discussed and debated by the highest echelons of the government. I mean, if something is, the assembly of the state is the government. They are the people who decide everything, and so that shows that it's something which really is extremely important. And well, there can be a lot of shortcomings in the way it's being dealt, but let me say that governments are pretty serious about it. Well, it's a complicated thing to deal with, and it's not very easy to find actionable solutions to it. And this is something in which we have to keep evolving. There is no permanent solution to this problem. What was thought of as a solution 20, 30 years ago may be a totally redundant thing to do today. Whatever new ideas that come, we need to implement them gradually, keep changing them, keep evolving them. And it's something in which, through experimentation and through trial and error, we have to keep trying and learn from other places. It's a very wide canvas. It's not something that you do a research and you get some standard solution to deal with. So because situations differ, species differ, people differ, everything differs from place to place. So nothing is, we can get ideas, we can try, we can tweak them, we can do whatever, adapt them, but every place has its own solution. And of course, those also will be complete solutions. Human-wildlife conflict can perhaps never be solved in its completeness. I think even if we are able to reduce its impacts, I think it will be a wonderful thing to do. And that is what our attempt should be, to mitigate it, to minimize it. That is how the whole approach ought to be. So, just if we talk about the main drivers of human-wildlife conflict, of course, Dr. Rahul Kaul has, in his opening remarks, I think, covered most of the issues. But just to have again a run through it, some of the major species that I've listed here, maybe I might have missed out something, but major species, I think I've mentioned them: elephants, wild pigs, nilgais, monkeys. Monkeys is a relatively new addition to this list, I would say. Even otherwise, when it comes to wild pigs and nilgais, and even elephants, I think with their increasing numbers, that definitely adds to the population. And there is no doubt about it. I think Dr. Kaul also talked about it. This is something which is a big positive, that actually most of our megafaunal species have shown an upward trend over the last few decades, which is something which is a big positive of our wildlife conservation effort. And particularly the state forest departments have to be given a lot of credit for this. I think the poaching is largely controlled, and I think overall protection regimes have improved many folds, and that is what is resulting in this increasing numbers of most of these species which are listed in front of you. But of course, it's not just that, it's many other things. Monkey is a very special case, I would say, wherein I think changing lifestyles has made a lot of difference to the magnitude of human-wildlife conflicts there. So anyway, but what I mean to say is every species has an innate tendency to increase in numbers. And once they increase in numbers, they need more food, more habitat. Dr. Kaul mentioned about tigers doubling in India. It's an amazing achievement which has been done over a short period of about 12 years, 2006 to 2018. So, but if the tigers have doubled, they need more space. And naturally, there is no space. We are a country of 130 crores. It's a huge, huge number. We all know that. And I think, so they're bound to be conflicts, because species have their own dynamics, own behavior. They need space. They need less and less of internal conflicts. So they get into more and more of external conflicts. Of course, the whole thing is not just the numbers of wild animals. It's also how the humans have been changing over this planet. In fact, I get reminded of a very interesting paper which talked about human carrying capacity of the Earth. And it had some year around 1970 or so, when it said it is now, around that time, it tipped. It crossed, the human population crossed the carrying capacity of the Earth. So we are already, if you believe in that writing, it was a paper published in a pretty good journal. And so we are already 50 years ahead of that tipping point. So there is no doubt that we are simply too many human beings in this country, something that people don't like to talk about because you don't like to point fingers at ourselves. So that's the thing. So we don't talk too much about the population and it being an issue. But when it talk about human-wildlife conflict, we cannot avoid it. We have to talk about it. There's no doubt that the population has increased, and with this increasing population, not only that, their demands have also been also increased. I think everybody likes to live a better life, and I think everybody has a right for a better life. Of course, that better is defined by a whole lot of things around you. I think American lifestyles have been model for much of the world. I mean, last 3-4 months, of course, have forced us to look inwards. But nonetheless, that high level of consumerism, I mean, if you look at the lifestyles in our metros, I think that is coming reasonably close to the American lifestyles. So even people living in rural India, in villages, they are also exposed to that. They also cherish for that. They also dream for that kind of a lifestyle. So it's not just the numbers, it's the demands which have really soared. And with that, of course, land is limited, resources are limited. So there bound to be more and more conflict on the resources. I don't need to dwell more on this. Of course, in India particularly, there's a fairly large share of our population which has direct dependency on natural resources, and that is where they come in confrontation with the wildlife. And this is not seen usually seen in the developed countries, which are, as I said, always are the models for the world. I mean, there are high dependencies, and it's very easy to say that wean them away, but we take them where? It's easier said than done, and in many cases, it's probably not an achievable thing. Of course, conflicts can happen because of some very, I would say, silly reasons like accidents or even adventurous behavior. There have been cases where people have got killed by wild animals while trying to take selfies with them. So these are some new things that have been coming in. Of course, infrastructural development, we are on a growth trajectory, and infrastructural development definitely is going to influence the wildlife habitats in some way or the other. So, of course, another good positive change that I see of late is a general acceptance of mitigatory measures among the development community also. So that's a positive thing, but of course, a lot needs to be done over there. And finally, changing lifestyles. Of course, the list can be much longer, but I particularly included this in context with the monkeys. And I mean, people give all kinds of logics. I mean, this is another problem about which a lot is being discussed and debated in my own state, Uttarakhand, and I'm sure in many other states in the country. My neighboring state, Himachal Pradesh, which has done a wonderful job of sterilization. I think they probably sterilized about 1.5 lakh monkeys, which is phenomenal. But I mean, this problem, I think, is again linked to our lifestyles. I mean, 30-40 years back, we were hardly producing any garbage, and I think the lifestyles were much simpler. There was no concept of wasting food, throwing food, or packaged food. All these things were just not there. And today, even a simple person having more or less I would say, a hand-to-mouth kind of a living, that he also can produce garbage and throw it out. And if you can find a number of pictures, some of our researcher colleagues had worked on this in Uttarakhand, where they actually studied the kind of animals which visit garbage dumps in certain towns or cities, and they were amazed at the kind of species. I mean, the most wild species were also visiting those garbage dumps, and people give a logic that, well, there is not enough for them in the forest, that is why they are coming there. I think much more than that, it's easy, nutritious food that they get there, and that's why the monkeys have left forests. I can give you the example of Dehradun. I think Dehradun district, it's one of the rare capitals of the country which have 50% area under forest. So Dehradun district has 50% area under forest. And much of that forest is untouched for the last 40 years. No harvesting, nothing of that kind. So what I mean to say is, nothing much has happened in our forests in the 40 years. In Dehradun, giving this example. But lifestyles have changed. 40 years back, I think we were not, even though I was in a reasonably well-off family, again, my father was a government servant. So, but the concept of wasting food was just not there. I mean, you could just not leave anything on the plate. And everything was utilized. I mean, I don't even remember garbage disposal as something being done. There were no packaging, nothing. Everything was brought in, cloth bags, and so that was a very different lifestyle. So probably monkeys didn't have anything to get in the urban landscapes or semi-urban landscapes. There was nothing for them on a regular basis. But today, there are mechanisms. They are everywhere. There are vehicles plying. They will collect garbage every morning and many places they don't do it every morning, and there are garbage piling up. In 2 days, you are worried that the vehicle has not come. There's too much of garbage there, and that garbage will be food, some vegetables, partly rotten, fruits, their waste and everything, which is all good quality food for the animals. We have put in a lot of stigma with it that you don't go near a garbage dump and all, but there's no stigma like that for monkeys or cows or stray dogs. So, I mean, they have a regular supply. So why would they jump from one tree to another in the forest, look for some small berry somewhere here and there with a constant threat of leopard on their head? I think it's very logical for them to leave the forest and come to the towns and have a. There are enough people amongst us who would love to feed them on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And that too, this is also something, I mean, again, 40 years back, if my dad got a banana for me, I would feel elated. Today, I see a lorry driver stopping at a place on a highway and giving dozens of bananas to the monkeys. So, I mean, with this new affluence, I think people can afford to do all these things, and people are doing it. So if you feed them well on Tuesdays and Fridays, on Tuesdays and Saturdays, rest of the day they will probably have enough guts to enter your house and rob things out of your refrigerator. So they will lose the fear in no time. They are intelligent creature. So that is what is happening. So changing lifestyles. I mean, very often people say that monkey problem is because there's nothing left for them in the forest. So this is how I counter it. And I'm very, very, very confident that what I'm saying is actually the truth. So anyway, of course, tolerance, Dr. Kaul also talked about. I think that is also linked with the value to life that we put. I think in olden times, I think people, if there was a conflict, many of you would have read Corbett books. A single leopard killing 125 people. So in Uttarakhand. So I mean, this is just one example. But people were kind of living with it, that it's God's wish. What can we do? That kind of a thing. But that has changed, and rightly so. Every life is precious, and it has to be taken care of, and we have to make sure that adequate safety is there for all of them. So some of the mitigatory strategies that have been on, I'm just giving this background so that I come to the topic of integration of communities into this. So, I mean, a whole lot of things have been tried, and many of them are preventive. They don't look so visible. For increasing prey base, but I think with the controlled poaching, and I know of many areas in Uttarakhand where today you drive, you can actually feel that the herbivore population has increased. There are areas in our reserve forest. I'll again give some examples like Ramnagar Forest Division, Haldwani Forest Division. These are all reserve forests, but largely reserve forests. Now they have some pockets of sanctuaries or conservation reserves within them, but largely reserve forests. And each of them house more than 50 tigers, more than half the tiger reserves of this country. So, and I remember in the early 90s when I used to drive through these forests, we used to rarely see any of the prey species. Sometimes we used to see them and feel very good about it. But today you can see far more them in far greater numbers. So I think this overall, the protection regime has helped in the increasing prey base, and thereby, of course, increasing carnivores also. Of course, prey species can directly inflict damages to the crops, and of course the predatory ones can lead to direct threat to the lives of people. Direct population control, well, again, this is something in which not much has been done, but few years back, I think 2016, after a very, very long gap, a few species were placed as vermins in a few states. Uttarakhand, for example, wild pigs were placed in the vermin category outside forest areas. And the moment you place a species in vermin, that means you can actually kill it without asking anybody. So that's quite an extreme step. But quite surprisingly, it for many reasons, I think not many animals were killed. This is what our general perception was. And because of a variety of reasons, of course, nowadays it's not so common to find people who can actually hunt down animals like wild pig, which are more or less strictly nocturnal. And then, of course, because the Wildlife Act has been implemented with a good amount of seriousness over many decades. So, it was actually very hard for people to believe that they can actually kill them if they raid their agricultural fields without asking anyone. So, not much actually happened on the ground. Of course, in some states like Bihar, the government or the forest department themselves engaged some professional shikaris to kill nilgais where it was declared as a vermin. Of course, that led to a controversy, and finally, I think it was stopped. Of course, there are other issues also linked with it: population monitoring of problem species, database. I already talked briefly about it. Very difficult to collate data. It's all spread over the various offices in the state, and with great difficulty, we can bring it to a centralized place. A lot of attempts have been made, some partially successful, and so it is really not contributing too much to the decision support system. So this is something which has been attempted. I remember about a year back in Uttarakhand, we even launched an app for this. Some states have gone a little ahead in this, and but many have to do a lot. Research support, of course, these are also long-term measures for identification of hotspots or behavior or other mitigatory measures. Habitat management, yes, these are things like weed eradications or plantations of preferred species in forest areas. So all these things, barriers, yes, a lot of barriers have been tried. In fact, we instituted a study with WII which looked at various barriers being tried in the state of Uttarakhand. They actually came up with some suggestions as to which are the most effective ones. But of course, most of them are effective. Only thing, sometimes their efficacy lasts only for a limited period because they need maintenance. And many of them are like government driven, so the ownership is little from the community side. And so I think community engagement is something which is being now tried at some certain pockets, but it's still yet to pick up as a large scale thing. And of course, it will be all based on local conditions, how you develop the models. It'll all depend on the conditions, species, people, their attitude, everything. So these are largely all preventive kind of measures which are in place. And of course, when things do happen, when there are problem animals, particularly relating to the ones which damage, which inflict damage to human life, deaths or injuries, then the last resort of removal, or if removal is not possible, even killing or capture of such animals is resorted to. Again, not an easy task. Very often nowadays, people feel that what's there? You take a tranquilizer gun and dart the animal. Most of these people have never even probably seen a tranquilizer gun or a darting gun. So then they feel it behaves like a regular shotgun. those who have handled, they know how difficult it is to tranquilize an animal even in broad daylight. And most of these animals, I mean, species like leopards or even tigers, which are problem animals, they become extra smart. In any case, they are quite nocturnal in human influenced landscapes. And to top it, I mean, these ones become extra smart, and they actually are very, very difficult to even sight. I mean, darting, tranquilizing them is a very, very difficult task. So there are successes, there are failures. At times, wrong animals are captured. Very difficult for on the ground to deal with these things. Again, often these things are made into very
Hello.
simplification, but still not very foolproof. Okay. And of course, ex gratia, relief, compensation. People keep debating on the positives and negatives of it, but definitely it works. And particularly for our poor people who lose crops or even their loved ones, it's a relief. It's really a relief. Human life, you can no way you can compensate that, but it's just a help. It's a ex gratia. That's why it's called ex gratia. But when it comes to crops and all, it is definitely a compensation. It may not be complete. And the good thing, the positive thing, again, the Uttarakhand example, we will. I mean, the policies, the procedures have evolved, and they have been evolved to make it more people friendly. And last year I was handling all this, and I mean, even for things like crop compensation, the pendency in the state was as low as 2 to 3 months. So, which is phenomenal. I mean, I know of the times when people were not able to get compensation for years together. And that too, the rates were extremely low. Now, even the government of India has issued advisories for minimum rates and a uniformity of rates across the country. But I think states have, on their own, also increased the rates, made them much more practical, and people are actually getting benefited out of it. Procedures have been simplified a great deal, and of course, there's always room for further improvement. But let me tell you that things are much, much better on this front than they used to be maybe 10, 15 years ago. But at the same time, there's a flip side to this compensation matter. I think this is often considered to be one reason why I mean, people feel alienated, and they don't feel that they feel that it's the government's job to solve all these problems. And I think people also view this step particularly as something which has made people a little distant to actually considering human wildlife problems as their problem as well. So that's another side of it. But I think on the ground, for all those who have actually implemented these things on the ground, particularly referring to my colleagues from the forest department, they know how useful and important it is for the local people. So, well, everything has to be a perfect thing, and this also has some associated, if I can say, negative aspects. And again, talking about removal of problem animals, I think the kind of care that is taken in India, the kind of precautions that are taken in India are, I think, maybe one of the best in the world. I think in most other countries in the world, if there's a problem animal, it's immediately killed. I mean, no questions asked. It's only in our country that even if you look at the order issued by the chief wildlife warden for finally killing an animal, they will say after exhausting all possible ways of capturing the animal live. So, I mean, of course, that goes well with the ethos of this country, where we actually want to give respect to all life forms, and probably evolving out of that. So, the kind of cares, precaution that we try to take in these matters. I mean, we'll try to trap the animal, cage the animal and only if it really is impossible to do that, then only the extreme step is usually taken. So, I mean, perception has been changing. As I said earlier, olden times, people accepted human-wildlife conflict as part of life, and the only way to deal with was to find solutions on their own. I think people used to indulge a lot in crop protection because I think the dependence on the crops for their very survival was very high. The lifestyles were very traditional, and it was a normal practice for people to stay awake throughout the night protecting their crops, which are practices which are gradually vanishing or have almost vanished from our rural part of the country. Of course, with the this started in the British era, I would say, when government started playing an important role, particularly in those days when it came to human lives, and that is how the whole idea of killing the so-called man-eaters. I mean, this word man-eater doesn't exist in our in the Wildlife Act. It only says when an animal becomes dangerous to human life, that kind of a statement. But that's the word being used in common parlance. So that was the time when government started intervening in helping to deal with these specific problem animals. And gradually the role of government in dealing with this problem increased. And so in the recent times, there's much greater reliance on government effort to deal with human-wildlife conflict. And to the extent that it's completely, in most places, it's completely thought to be a problem which has to be completely solved by the government. And I think that is where it has been taken to the other stream, which is not a very good thing. The expectations from the government are very high, and this is what has led to, and the kind of thing that for those who have dealt with this problem on the ground, when there is a problem like this, the people say, take away your leopard, take away your tiger. And they are being considered as government animals. So the separation is so extreme, actually. And of course, that leads to blame game also, politics, local level, higher level, everywhere. That it becomes a major point for government thrashing in many of our rural areas where this problem is there. So, but basically, what it has led to is that people, I mean, although it's a problem which affects them, but they feel that the solution has to come from outside. And this is a mindset which actually developed over last few decades. As I said, I mean, with the increasing role of government in this matter, not that the government should not increase its role, it should, but parallelly, this alienation started in dealing with this problem, and it is, I would say, in most places, it is near complete. So now to today, integrate communities in solving human-wildlife problems is quite a challenge, and I have my own personal experience in this matter, and it's not just like, I mean, people who it's not just the local people. It's even within the government. The blame game can go on. I mean, the other echelons of the government will blame the forest department that they are not able to solve this problem. Now, the thing is that it's something which has to be owned by the entire governance and also by the people. So that is where the change has to occur. And the change within the government, I think it is now beginning to happen with all this furor and priority that it's being given in the highest echelons of the government. I think gradually other wings of the government are also, I mean, talking about it. And in initial stages, though, I would say beginning to own up things. In fact, even in MOEF, because I'm involved in that, it's still in the pipeline. But there have been, in fact, a lot of advisories from MOEF CC on dealing with problem species. They are species specific as well as direct general guidelines. And one of the advisories which is still in the pipeline but may come up shortly, where it suggests a state level committee headed by the chief secretary of the state to deal with the human wildlife conflict. So that actually is a very important step, because that would make human wildlife problem a problem of the entire government. When it comes to importance, when it comes to finances, forest department is actually a very weak department. So because most of us are within the sector, so we only deal with the forest department, so we have a different perception. But actually, looking at the overall governance of things, we may not be a very strong department to say so. So we need help from the entire government, the ownership from the entire government, if we have to deal with this problem, which actually influences negatively the lives of the people. And of course, the other part is people. And I think this is like taking the clock back, when people actually thought it to be their problem and we're trying to solve it their ways. But today, of course, government is there completely in this role. And the idea is to somehow break that jinx where people feel that it's just something for the government to solve, and they have to just raise their voices about solving it, and that's just about all. So the whole idea of people accepting the problem as theirs, so and not as a problem which is, or rather I would say, accepting the problem as well as working towards a solution for it as their own job, along with the government. Of course, people have limited access to resources, and so we have to somehow bring in this idea. And as I said, it's not easy to bring in. And there have been some examples. One of the most celebrated ones is sorry. Just give me a second. Huh?
Sure, sir, sure. I think there are questions coming up, but we'll try and take up one or two questions because it's slightly over time. So once sir finish, we should be able to take one or two questions.
Okay. Now I think I should quickly wind up. Yeah. So Mumbai Junar area, that involving people, all, I think most of the stakeholders around was a wonderful example. And I know how difficult it is to change the attitudes. And I remember when we started work in Uttarakhand, because this is something in which I was involved right from the inception, way back in 2016. And when we started having the dialogue with the local people, that you have to be involved in dealing with this problem along with the government, that was an idea which was not quite acceptable to them. And the whole idea that these problem animals are there, they are not going to go anywhere. We have to learn to live with them so that the damage is least, minimized, and if possible, almost brought to zero. So, this was an idea which was just not acceptable to them. The only solution that was being nurtured in their mind over the decades was just remove these animals from here. And we all know in our country, that's not a solution that we can talk about, at least in the present scenario. So I know there are many countries in the world which have got rid of their dangerous animals, so-called carnivores, but definitely we are not looking for that kind of a solution in India, even locally also. So that has to be told to the people that that realization has to come, that you have to be there in the villages or rural areas or even in semi-urban areas, and the leopard is also going to be there. I'm just citing leopard as an example. So how best the coexistence can occur? I remember even within my own colleagues, there was a lot of resistance. How can you talk about living with leopards? It's like undermining human life, that kind of a viewpoint. But little did they understand that it's actually a solution to minimize the problem. So when we started talking to the villagers, there was definitely no acceptability. So, as we say, seeing is believing. I still remember the first time we took some of the rural people from from Tihri, Pauri and Almora in Uttarakhand, areas which were quite severely affected by this problem. They were actually when we took them to the Mumbai area with Borivali example to let them see the Borivali example, they actually they really were not accepting it on day one, day two, but gradually after seeing things happening on the ground, that change in mind came. And that was, I think that's the fastest way to change attitudes, by showing them something which is actually working. Jharkhand also, I think some involvement of, there will be more examples here and there of local involvement through a quick response team, village level quick response teams. That has come as a good solution. So changing attitudes is one thing, is very, very important, because we have to deal with an attitude which has actually evolved over last many decades. And this is something which, and you cannot do with a handful of people, handful of villagers. It has to go into the entire community. And of course, how better to do than using the community leadership itself. So in fact, we actually, I remember in 2016 November, when we took some of the local people down to Mumbai from Uttarakhand, we actually picked up people who are very vocal about this problem, and who are like kind of local leadership in that matter. So and anyway, to our great surprise and pleasure, and all kudos to the people working on this problem in this landscape of Mumbai, Pune. Within a week, they were a converted lot. So I mean, this is just an example, and but it has to be sustained. It doesn't stop there. And that is where a role of a whole lot of people, and I'm happy later, I think in the subsequent days, you're going to talk about the Tihri example. Sanjay Sondhi from Titli Trust and Coco Rose, the local DFO, are going to jointly do this session. Because this is a model in which we know things from the scratch from 2016, and we are now 2024 years. Doesn't seem to be a very long time, but actually there have been visible changes, and this involvement has to be at all levels. See, I mean, the moment this thing get initiated, that blame game automatically starts taking a back seat, and this involvement has to be at all levels. Local people, particularly women, children, and in fact, the program that is going on in Uttarakhand involves school children in a very big way. Political leadership, and see, there may be again resistance there, but it doesn't take too long for them to realize the true picture. The NGOs, I mean, I think their role is very critical. I think in Tihri, if we have achieved something, a lot of credit goes to the NGOs who are partnering with the forest department, and of course, media has a very critical role. And Virat is here. He came in from Mumbai and spoke to the media in Dehradun about how human-wildlife conflict needs to be reported if you want to actually solve this problem. I'm sure he is going to talk more about it later in one of the sessions. But this is what is actually all. I mean, until unless communities own up this problem and work with the government, I don't think we have a solution. And it has to be continuously evolved. What is working today may not work 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. There may be problems. Today, we are talking about quick response teams within the villages, quick response teams as the first level of defense. If a leopard enters a village in Uttarakhand, if there are a group of 5 young people, young men or women over there who have been given some basic training, at least they'll be there to handle the things at the beginning. Otherwise, these problems, there are a lot of rumor mongering. In no time, there are mobs there, and the whole thing gets distorted. In fact, people who have dealt with this problem on the ground, they know that in most cases, it's much more difficult, far more difficult to deal with the mob which gets collected in such situation than the problem animal itself. So that kind of a thing keeps happening all over, and until unless the villagers themselves start taking this whole thing positively on their own side and view them as the government and other stakeholders working together in this problem, I don't think we are going to reach anywhere. So this definitely, as on today, seems to be the way forward. It may work well in many places. It may even not work in some places. I mean, I cannot guarantee that it will work everywhere. There are situations differ, location differ. And I would also say that this is something which will have to keep evolving. Maybe the way communities get integrated today, there may be a requirement of changing that in years to come. And for all you know, policies at the highest levels may change, and we may actually go in for some very different methods of dealing with this problem. I mean, there are a lot of big words like immunocontraception and such things, but as of now, I don't see them happening on the ground in the near future. But for all you know, 10 years down the line, the way science is progressing, there may be some breakthroughs there, and we may have some very, very good technology-based solutions. So we don't know. It's anybody's guess what's going to happen later, but we have to deal with the problem today. And as on today, I think integrating communities in dealing with this problem is surely I consider it to be a major step forward. I think I'll stop here. I'm sure you will all hear a lot about community involvement in the individual case studies over the next 4 days. And whatever I said, I think it'll only get more and more strength in the next few talks over the next 4 days. So thank you very much. And sorry, I think I took longer than I was supposed to. Once again, thank you, WTI, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. And it was a very insightful talk. I think everybody did get to know a lot of things, right from very general things when we talk about monkeys and something very specific, and especially your first-hand information and your experience from Uttarakhand. We've got a lot of questions. We have about 100 people engaged at the moment in this webinar from Zoom and YouTube. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time for too many questions to be taken. And I mean, you both Rahul sir and you are welcome to answer some of these on the chat itself if you have the time. I would like to just take up two questions, one for Rahul sir and one for you. First one, which is like a general trend that has come on the human-wildlife conflict, is with respect to the changing scenarios, with respect to environment, with respect to COVID related lockdowns. So what is the trend that is likely that we can foresee in the future? To the point that even somebody suggested on YouTube that do you think lockdowns is the answer for every year despite COVID or no COVID to help the environment flourish? So Rahul sir, would you like to comment?
Yeah, see, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, we did see on the social media a lot of videos and a lot of instances where people have gone in and killed animals. And look, I think we could use COVID as an opportunity to basically, because this is something to do with zoonotics. This is something to do with wild animals and humans. And if you can project COVID properly, that look, there is a danger of a different kind. And COVID, everybody has seen as to what it has done. And it has affected everybody. So if we can project and use this opportunity to basically create that awareness and sensitization amongst people who actually go and are involved with conflict or are facing conflict or are facing wild animals, I think we would actually, it would be a lot more meaningful. So COVID actually can be used as an opportunity to sensitize people. I don't know what Dr. Dhananjay feels about it.
Sorry. First thing, I think, well, there is no doubt that COVID gave a big respite to our wilderness areas, our wildlife habitats. and I'm sure it must have had a positive impact on many aspects of the nature around us. But I think this lockdown came as a compulsion, and I really wonder, looking at all the aspects, because see, the government decisions are made on a whole lot of considerations. People maybe in this webinar have a strong bias towards conservation, but the government, in fact, all the opening up is, I think, to a great extent driven by the requirement of the economy. So those considerations are also there, and I think whatever views and ideas you and me may have may not really have too much of an influence on the government decisions, because I think they have to look at a much larger picture about the whole well-being of the country. And when we talk about well-being, it's, of course, whether we like it or not, people are primary. So I think, and everything is being done towards more tangible things. Intangible things always take a backseat. And it's very difficult to draw a line. If you say lockdown, for how long? Where all, and what kind of lockdown? So right now the lockdown was an option which, because there was no other option perhaps. But in a normal situation, there'll be too many counter arguments. So I think probably we should not be discussing and debating too much on this topic, about which probably we will not have too much of control also.
Yes, sir. I think you did touch upon the second topic that I was going to ask, because we've got a few messages with respect to changing policies, legislatures, how people can basically voice their opinions, and as you have put it very succinctly, that government has its own priorities, so we need to look at that. So, and I think that point right now, with respect to this webinar, where we're talking about community engagement with conflict mitigation, I think it's not very relevant to that aspect, of course, but it's an important point and it can be taken up sometime later. The second thing, what people have definitely asked is that how things like citizen science and things like that have helped or can help with respect to conflict mitigation, especially to additional point, that when we say that there's a popular perception that there is an increasing human-wildlife conflict incidences, there are more conflicts that are happening. Is it actually true, or is it related to more reporting, more citizen science initiatives, more people coming forward citing these animals? So what would be your comment? Dhananjay Mohan, sir.
See, citizen science can be helpful. In fact, when we started off with this lockdown this year, immediately there was the social media was full of a whole lot of videos and pictures about animals being seen in places where they were never seen before, and water in the rivers becoming much cleaner and all, which is, many of them were, of course, certain things which we would expect in a situation like this. Of course, large number of them turned out to be fake also, old videos and all that. And there was, we tried our level best to actually check their authenticity, but in barring a few cases, I think we failed. And we even developed an app in Wildlife Institute of India for people to report such kind of things. But we didn't get too much of response actually on that. So, but citizen science can be helpful in dealing with the human-wildlife conflict, definitely, and particularly in areas where these conflicts do happen. These days the technology is very helpful, and we can actually know about the presence of problem animals in certain areas and get communicated very quickly. I mean, in olden times, probably if there's a problem animal moving around somewhere, except for the local affected people would not even get to know of it. Even the people who are supposed to deal with it, the news used to travel so slowly. But today, in this era of communication, I think it can be helpful in at least locating the problem quickly and dealing with it. I mean, once you know because very often in dealing with human-wildlife conflict, time becomes crucial. If you are able to reach a spot where a leopard has entered a house or somewhere in a matter of half an hour to 1 hour, you will be able to deal with the problem in a much easier way than if you reach there in 6 hours. It's a hell of a difference in between reaching a problem place in an hour or in 6 hours, because there'll be in 6 hours, you can be very sure there'll be a few thousand people around that place, and even the animal may be disturbed to a much greater levels. So, and this is where I think the moment you know where to report for such things, this kind of reporting-based citizen science can be very helpful. And of course, it's not just citizen science. I think the voluntary effort required in particularly awareness building and involving people, I think that's very important. I know this Borivali example again, others would be talking about it, but they had that Mumbaikars for SGNP, Sanjay Gandhi National Park. So that kind of a group which helped in bridging the gap between the government and the local people. So their role will be multifarious. I mean, we should not just lock it at citizen science, because citizen science, the moment we say it needs some kind of a data reporting and all, it's not just that. I mean, that may be a component of that, but I think common citizens and even educated people can contribute a lot. And because, as I said, I mean, there's this all about changing attitudes, changing perspectives. So this is something which has to have a sustained effort, and committed people, which we require, because this, if it has to be done, what we started in Uttarakhand was like a pilot. It was started in a few villages. Now, if it is to be upscaled, we need more and more people doing this. So we need definitely a lot of voluntary help, which may be in awareness building, citizen science, or some other methodology.
Thank you, sir. I think that explains a lot. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take any more questions. I can see a lot of questions are related to examples of how successfully one can mitigate a conflict, whether it is a new conflict animal like Upamanyu Chakrabarti has talked about leopards in North Bengal, or a new area where elephants have come into previously untouched areas, which also I think Prachi and Jayan's talk is going to talk about. So a lot of these questions will subsequently be answered over these 4 days with real case examples. So so without further delay, I think first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rahul Kaul and Dr. Dhananjay Mohan for sparing their time in their busy schedule and interacting with all the participants and giving us a very interesting overview of human-wildlife conflict and how we really need to look at innovative methods, innovative strategies to really mitigate this. And on behalf of WTI, I'd really like to thank both of you, and we hope that you will stay around for the further sessions, or you may come in and go. And thank you, Rahul sir. Thank you, Ranjamohan sir.
Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with the very a good start for this day 1 on the session of Living with the Wild, we would actually start the Living with the Elephant section now. We have amongst us one of the pioneers of human-elephant conflict mitigation work done in South India, Dr. Anand Kumar, who's going to talk about his experiences about the innovative techniques that they have used in Valparai and Hassan, how to mitigate, and especially using community representatives. So I'd like to call upon Dr. Anand Kumar. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself first, and then we can get on to the panel?
Sure. So my name is Anand Kumar. I'm working with the Nature Conservation Foundation, which is based in Mysore. And I have been working on elephants for the past 17 to 19 years. And earlier I've worked on monkeys with the Professor Meva Singh in the Tamil Nadu Annamalai Hills. How to go with this? Are you going to ask questions?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. So as I mentioned that your work is based out of Valparai and Hassan, and My first question to you would be that these two are very different landscapes with different problems. So how did you decide to choose tackle these two separate issues in Valpara and Hassan with respect to human-elephant conflict?
Yeah. So can I share my presentation screen?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah. See, we have been working in two model landscapes, which are very, very contrasting in terms of their habitat and in terms of their landscape matrices. And what we felt was that integrating stakeholders is a critical thing, and of course, for protecting elephants. Uh, last in 2002, we started our work in Valpara region, Valpara Plateau, in the Annamalai Hills of Tamil Nadu. And other place where we are working is Hassan region in Karnataka. So why I'm saying that these two are two model landscapes because of the contrasting habitats. So if you look at the Valpara Plateau, it's mostly tea dominated landscape because it's about 220 square kilometers of the area, primarily dominated by tea, which occupies about 72% of the total land. And there are small fragments, rainforest fragments, which are dispersed within among tea plantations. But if you look at the Valpara Plateau, there are about 70,000 people living here. They are dependent on tea and coffee plantations in this. And there are a few patches of eucalyptus which are also distributed across plantations. And so the entire Valpara Plateau, there are about 100 to 120 elephants move through this, and they are using this plateau from the for centuries. So the Annamalais, which means that Anna means elephant, Malay means hills. So this Annamalais, Valpara Plateau is a part of the Annamalai Hills, and historically that this place has been used by elephants. If you look at the Valpara Plateau, it's just like a tea plantation area rightly embedded within the vast expanse of the forest areas within the Annamalai Hills. If you look at this map, where you can see that this is the Valpara Plateau, and these are rainforest fragments which are distributed among the plantations. But if you see on one side that there is Animal Tiger Reserve, the other side Chenab Wildlife Sanctuary, Erviculam National Park, Vulture Reserve forest areas, and Parambiculam Tiger Reserve. So the kind of problems here is very different because here we don't have crop damage here because elephants don't feed on tea, but there are damages to buildings which store food grains. Which are those buildings? If you look at, there are ration shops, there are noon meal centers in schools which are damaged by elephants. And of course, the most critical thing here in this landscape is about loss of life or getting injured because of elephants. So that's the most critical thing. But if you look at the other landscape, which is Hassan, which is completely a contrasting landscape, which is primarily dominated by coffee, and paddy is grown between coffee in the fallow regions of the landscape. And there are few eucalyptus patches, acacia plantations, which are the only refuges for elephants when they're actually moving through this. There are about around 45 elephants in the monitoring area where we are working, which would cover about 620 square kilometers, covering about 240 villages. And there are about 1,000 people living here. And it's not an isolated elephant population because the elephants are coming from the neighboring Coorg region or Kodagu region into this area. So it's about, if you take in the surrounding areas, even though there are 45 elephants where we are actually monitoring around 45 elephants, but there are more number of elephants which are there. But the entire, most of the conflict is within these 20 to 40 villages. And of course, that this place has been, there are a lot of captures that happened for decades. Seeing from 1980s onwards, that major captures happened, and regularly that some elephants have been removed as a measure towards addressing the human elephant conflict. But in spite of all these things, that conflict, loss of life or property crop damage is still there, it persists there. So in both the landscapes, if you see, the common point here is that loss of life is a very, very critical thing. As Dhananjay Sir has rightly pointed out that if a person dies, that entire the family is ruined, and the person may be the breadwinner of the family, and the entire village develop negative attitude, there will be tremendous amount of pressure on the forest department to remove elephants. And people would say that, okay, these are your elephants. I know they will tell the forest department, these are your elephants, you take away these things. So that mounts a lot of pressure on the forest department to remove. So that's why these are the two different kinds of landscapes. So as you can see in this map, that major part of the landscape is under coffee. Yeah. Yes.
Just one second. Okay, so so I think that gives an overview of the two landscapes and why these two landscapes are differ. As they say, if the problems are different, the solutions are different. So, what were your approaches when it comes to the strategy to reduce this conflict with elephants in the two landscapes? That'll be great if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, we started our work in Valparai in 2002, and I was studying monkeys, and my colleagues were studying birds and civets. But since we have been working there for many years, that the plantation companies, if you look at the Valparai Plateau, the most of the plantations, tea plantations, are owned by 7 major companies. Of course, there are a few individual tea plantation owners, but the majority of the land is owned by national and multinational companies. And our long-term presence there has actually made us to convey to the plantation companies that we are doing wildlife research there to find out how best that we could actually conserve either the forest or the animals there. So that has actually opened up a dialogue between the plantation companies and us. So one of the request came from the plantation companies that why don't you people look at elephants? So that's how we started our work in 2002. And our strategy was that not to find solutions to begin with, but we wanted to understand the problem. Because unless we move from problem towards a solution, there is no way that we could actually find a measure that is applicable locally and reduce the conflicts between people and elephants. So that was the key thing. So we started looking at elephants' perspective, that how they are actually using this landscape and which are the areas are very critical for elephants and how they are actually interacting with the people. So that's very, very critical of that. So we started looking at this thing. One of the things what we found was that in this landscape, whether it's Valparai or Hassan, the only thing what people has, first thing the people said that we can't live here because my neighbor lost his life or her life. We are unable to drop our children to school, or we are unable to go for work, because constantly living the fear will actually mount a lot of pressure in people. So the loss of life or lack of quality of life was the main reason. And we started investigating the human deaths issue, because if you look at the human elephant conflict, there are two components. One is the loss of life, or second one is damage to property or crop. So which is two different components. These two different components would require different ways of addressing the issues. So that would require understanding the problem. So when we started looking at the human deaths due to elephants, in the Valparai region or in Hassan region, both the landscapes, a majority of the people lost their lives. Nearly 60 to 70% of the people lost their lives due to elephants on roads. Okay. And the second thing was that we looked at the second question what we asked: are there any patterns there across months? So in Valparai, what we have seen that most people lost their lives between December and February. December, Jan, February, 3 months time. Nearly 70% of the deaths occurred between these months. But the same pattern was not seen in Hassan region, which means that any time the death may happen, the person may lose the life across months. But when we investigate what time that these deaths happened, that in Valparai, we didn't see any particular pattern with regard to time of the day. But in Hassan, most people lost their lives between morning 6 to 10 and evening 4 to 8. So, but when we investigated the circumstances of death, in Valpara region, a majority of the people lost their lives or accidental encounters. And other reasons like lack of safety at work, as you can see in this graph, or lack of sanitation. So people go out to ease themselves. So that's where the more problem. So people were not aware of. In majority of the cases, out of 47 cases, 36 people lost their lives because they were unaware of elephant presence. The same thing that what you can see even in Hassan region. So between 2010 and 2020, in the last one decade, the 39 people lost their lives, and out of which 28 instances, people in 28 instances, people were unaware of elephant presence. So that has actually given us a way that how best that we could actually inform people about elephant presence. And when we were actually talking to one of the managers in Valparai, that when we presented the results to plantation companies there, one of the people, Mr. Hegde, he was vice president of Hindustan Lever Limited. He said, our people watch television channel, okay, Valpara television channel. And why don't you people make use of that? Putting up a scroll on the Valpara television channel. So the solution came from the people themselves. Solution came from the stakeholders themselves. So because as a manager, he knows that how people actually regulate their lives and what kind of facilities they do have. So he was very much aware of that. So when we presented the results, that a lot of people lost their lives because they didn't know where the elephants were. So this was way back in 2004. So we started putting up scroll as about elephant locations to people. So that time there were 25,000 connections, which means 25,000 families were covered with this. So every day in the evening around 4 o'clock, the Valpara television actually displays the message. But over the period of time that it came down because subscriber to Valpara television channel came down. That was the time that a lot of people started using mobile phones. So we went around and asked people that whether they would like to receive elephant location messages, elephant presence messages on their mobile phone in the form of text messages. Yeah, so that's how we started this in 2011. So elephants are, as you can see in this photograph, that elephants are nearest Manas bungalow. So there is one mobile phone that is given as an emergency contact number. So we are keeping track of the number of calls received on this particular mobile phone number and meticulously entered and looked at what people actually are looking at. What we also felt that what if people can't read text messages? So that's where that we started voice messages. That these are the people that who actually voluntarily shared their mobile phone numbers with us, and these are kept. We followed high ethical standards of the institution and kept all this information coded. Okay. And so when we started sending out voice messages, there was tremendous amount of support that we received. That what if a person doesn't have a mobile phone? So that's also another thing. So the third kind of facility what we have provided to people all was that installing mobile operated alert beacons. These are nothing but a simple LED red flashing light. Those flashing lights can be operated from a mobile phone. So we worked with a company called Niagara Automation Company in Coimbatore to get this design. And with the involvement of Tamil Nadu Forest Department, their Annamalai Tiger Reserve, we have installed in strategic locations. So this would help people when they are actually walking at night or late in the evening. So if you look at the people there in Valparai region, people work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. And after the evening hours, after their working hours, they go home and come to the small town called Valparai to do the purchases. When they're going back, it was already dark. And that was a time that because less noise and less disturbance, elephants will also move from one forest fragment to the other forest fragment. So that's where the surprise encounters would happen. So as long as the person is in the bus, he's safe. But the moment he gets out of the bus and from the bus stop towards his house, that's where he's likely to encounter elephants. So what we did was that these lights are visible from the nearest bus stop. As soon as the person gets out of the bus, he could see if the light is glowing, which means that there are elephants somewhere within the 1 square kilometer of the region. But we didn't want to take up the turning on lights responsibility. We asked people to take it up. So each light can be operated from a mobile phone, that is also from the registered mobile phone thing. So as soon as, see, there are 70,000 people living there, and elephants can't escape 70,000 people. What are they need that if somebody sees elephants there, immediately that they will inform this concerned person who could actually operate these lights from a mobile phone. So you can actually dial this particular light, because the light has a SIM card, and dial that particular number, and after 3 rings, it triggers on. So that will actually intimate others that there are elephants close by. So this will also bring a kind of sense of responsibility in people that they are also part of the conflict management. So it's a proactive conflict management thing. So based on this, some positive results that we started seeing this, we have expanded, and apart from this, there's a huge amount of changes that we would see that when we actually present the results to Tamil Nadu Forest Department, and Tamil Nadu Forest Department has come up with the rapid response teams. Now there are about in each range, there are 2 ranges there, which would actually manage the entire Valparai Plateau, Valparai range and Monobuli range, where in each range has 32 rapid response teams. They are extremely good because the way which they coordinate things are extremely good, and they also have helpline, so which is a really proactive step that was taken by the Tamil Nadu Forest Department. And so these rapid response teams will be there once as soon as they receive a call from the people. So they will be there at the spot within 15 to 20 minutes time. So it has dual advantage. One is that the presence of the forest department, rapid response teams, uniform people will actually build confidence in local people. The second thing is that so that their property is protected, their houses are protected from the department, and also the presence of department people will also reduce pressure on elephants, because people can't harass elephants. They won't chase elephants away from their neighboring areas. So it's a kind of a win-win situation having the rapid response teams. The same thing was actually replicated in Hassan. So where the messages would go in Kannada language, and also carries a mobile phone number where people could actually call. So every day there are about 2,000 messages are actually going. So when we analyze the SMS thing, delivery reports, that 85% of the messages were got delivered. So in spite of all this, there are certain critical stretches where people where a lot of deaths happened. So there are about 9 boards, digital display boards. It's nothing but a simple thing, a digital display board where one can actually work on the computer and type message, elephant location message on the computer and send it to the board, which has a GSM kit. And so there are about 9 boards and 12 alert beacons, which are again the mobile operator alert beacons, which are installed in strategic locations for people to know where the elephants are. And at the same time, the Karnataka Forest Department has installed 5 boards, and which is actually helping about 12,000 people in 29 villages. So with this, so there is a complete involvement both from the people and the department and scientific and conservation organizations working together. So that's the main strategy.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. I've actually seen the documentary about this, and I think others who are participating here should also see, and maybe a little later you can possibly send the link of the entire beautifully done documentary about the entire process. My next question would actually be, as you said, that the circumstances with respect to the conflict in both areas were different. And considering that you had to bring all the local communities on board to use SMS systems or early warning systems, what were there any changes, or were there any differences in their attitudes and the cooperation that between Hassan and Valparai? And if there were differences, what were there as challenges, and how these challenges were met during the project?
See, basically, when we see, change is always resisted. Okay, that's one thing. And when we started this, when we approached people, because they were not sure about how these things would work, but after presenting the results, that they also understood. Okay, and look at either the Tamil Nadu Forest Department or Karnataka Forest Department, when we presented this, and in both places there are rapid response teams that have come up. Okay, so that's the biggest change actually. And and the companies were very, very receptive in Valparaiso region, as well as people. So if you look at, I will just give you an example that when we interacted with the people in Hassan, that we only presented the results and under what circumstances people lost their lives. We never said that we are going to implement this SMS system, or because we are not sure whether people would like it. So one of the participants, woman, she came up with her own experience. One day, she was actually dropping her daughter to the nearest bus stop because the school bus comes to the bus stop. And she had to pass through an eucalyptus patch. The road passes through the eucalyptus patch. And she didn't notice that there was an elephant standing there at the edge of the eucalyptus patch. But luckily that for her, this thing, and her dog followed her, and the dog went ahead and noticed the elephant and started barking at the elephant. And the elephant charged the dog, and dog returned back. So after seeing that elephant suddenly coming onto the road, and this woman got really scared, and she picked up her daughter and ran back. She said that if I had known that there was an elephant standing there, I would have taken a different route, or I would have taken a different thing. So all these facilities will actually enhance people to take informed decisions. So that was the main thing. Okay, and it's not that living in the constant fear is a really traumatic thing. And what these facilities will actually tell people that it will remove the fear of unknown. So fear of known is still there, but fear of unknown is not there. So where the people can actually they can be empowered with the information. So these are if somebody doesn't have a mobile phone, actually one can actually look at the display board or lights. And so these are various kinds of facilities that are available for people to take it. So that kind of change that what we have seen a lot. So after initiation of these systems, what happened was that number of people calling that particular contact number has gone up tremendously. That's one thing what we have seen. The second part is that the people, when we analyze the nature of the call, a majority of the people that who are actually calling that particular number asking where the elephants are, now they started reporting elephants. Sir, the elephants are here. Please send out message to lots of other people, because this system would actually take to inform 1,000 people in a fraction of a minute. So that was the change that we could actually see from people.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. The last question the last point that I would want to ask you is that where do you see this project? What is the ultimate success for this project with the community engagement that you look forward for Hassan and Valparai? Will it be a new area that takes up this model, or this becomes a self-sustaining model, which it already is partly? Where do you see it in the next 5-10 years? What would be your ultimate aim in that?
With regard to success, let me put one thing here.
Yes.
See, one is that understanding the problem, implementing measures, and monitoring those measures, how effective they are. These are very critical to make sure that whether somebody could actually follow this and replicate the systems in a different landscape. Okay. And so after understanding and implementing, we also tracked how it has actually impacted the deaths. Okay. And it's not only the mere number that's important, but it's also that it would actually make people to take informed decisions. Okay. So let me put a graph here that talks about number of deaths over a period of since 1994 for Valparai region. So if you look at that, between this graph indicates the number of people, an average number of people died for every 3 years between 1994 and 2020. So if you see this, and gradually there was a decline in the number of incidents. We started working in 2002, and before 2002, between 1994 and 2002, an average 3 people were actually losing their lives. But after 2002, when in different stages where the early warning systems have come up, and the rapid response teams have actually started working really well, and the death has come down over a long period of time. It has come down to 1. But if you look at the average number of people losing lives in the last 3 years is just less than 1. So it's not only that presence of rapid response teams have actually resulted in decline in property damage incidents by more than nearly 50%. So this is Valparai situation. What about Hassan situation here? So if you look at this graph indicates number of people who lost their lives between 2010 and now, till now, 2020. So even May and June. So if you look at the capture and removal operations that was done in 2014, and there was a sudden drop here in 2015, one person only lost their life. But next year, if you see that 4 or 5 people lost their lives, which means that captures have not really worked in giving safety to people. And because other elephants come in and recolonized that place from the nearby areas, from the surrounding areas. So, but if you look at, we started implementing early warning systems here and establishment of rapid response teams by the Karnataka Forest Department in September 2017, you can actually see there was a gradual decline in number of human deaths incidents over years. So it came down from an average of 5 to 0. So if you look at, barring this one particular incident where it happened beyond our monitoring villages where there are no early warning systems, but if you look at last 24 months, almost close to 24 months, there's not even a single instance of human death that happened. Okay, and as a result of this, what benefit that elephants have actually got? One is that for the first time, perhaps that no capture of elephants that have taken place in Hassan region. And the crop, of course, I do agree that crop damage by elephants remains as a serious issue in this landscape. We really need to work towards that. So as a collective effort, one could actually bring down the number of deaths, increase the safety. And it's not only this number of deaths that's a primary thing, but a lot of people started using these messages to inform others. And actually, they can actually plan their outdoor activities. They can actually tell others to be cautious and work out their plans. So these are the main important thing. Okay, and with regard to implementation of these measures and application of these measures, no, it's a context specific. One has to really see, understand the local situation there, understand elephants, understand people, okay, and their interactions. Then only that we could actually think about solutions. If somebody actually sees that these systems may help in other landscapes where they can be replicated, then they can actually try it out.
Yes, sir. I think it's pertinent that the solution has to be the problem specific, and it only based on the circumstances. If it's the similarities, it can be used. So thank you, and it's very encouraging to see the reduction in the number of conflict cases that you talked about. Uh, as a parting note, what would you talk about the lessons, especially what are the lessons that you learned over time? And also, not to forget that you already mentioned that the forest department was very intricately involved in the implementation and planning of this process. Were there any other stakeholders that over the time you thought should be included or when were included, like media or civil society, etc.?
See, media has been really supportive. One thing, because just to give you an example, that from the Valpara region, initially the media people were reporting there are hundreds of elephants, and the titles actually influenced the people there. Okay, Yanagala Attahasam, which means that elephants are creating havoc. So when we had meetings, regular interaction with the media people, and particularly the Tamil newspapers there, and presented the results, then they actually changed. They started reporting factual information. Even if there's some death that happens, they also report the circumstances, which is really great thing. It's a remarkable change that one can actually see in the media. But the lessons what we learned from these two landscapes is that let's understand the problem and move towards a solution. The second thing is that we really need to give importance to individual elephants and people, and a commitment to dialogue or collaboration with the diverse range of stakeholders is critically important. See, what's happening is that if there is a mismatch between what people needs, what wildlife requirements, and what department does and what suggestions scientific and conservation community give, if there is a mismatch among this, then there's no point. No, we can't find the solution. So it requires a proper alignment between these three people. And taking science to people is a very, very critical thing. See, usually what happens that all our measures are after the incident that happens. We really need to take up measures or implement measures before the incident happens. Of course, SMS and all these are the technology related thing, but it's only a tool. But what kind of tool that we need to use where should come from proper understanding of elephants and people. And let's forget about the permanent solutions, because there's no permanent solution, but there are better solutions that are available. Because permanent solution means that there has to be an exclusive zones, which is very difficult given that there are hundreds of people and thousands of hundreds of elephants and thousands of people interacting with each other on daily basis. So there is no way that we can have exclusive zones, exclusive areas for elephants and people together. So what we also learned that solutions lie in places and with the people.
Thank you, sir. I think that sums it up quite well. And there have been a lot of good discussion points that have come on the Zoom chat as well as YouTube, which I'm monitoring. And of course, we'll take up these questions towards the end of the session. I would also request you, if you have any particular material, any website link for people to get to know more about the projects, you can share it on the Google chat so people can visit it at their time. And with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your successes, lessons, and very innovative techniques, a well-strategized mitigation measure with respect to elephants in these two landscapes. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
With that, we would like to go to another landscape. With us, we have Dr. Prachi Mehta and Jayant Kulkarni, who have worked on a new neighbors, as they have titled their talk, where elephant conflict has risen in areas which had not seen elephant conflict. And in the plenaries also, some people did ask in such situations what can be done. And I think their talk is going to talk about their work is going to talk about these things, how they've managed and how they have mitigated effectively using community. So I'd like to invite Dr. Prachi and Jayant Kulkarni. Are you there?
Yes.
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 Yeah. Good morning, Abhishek.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's afternoon. We have run into the time, but I guess it's first day, so of course there's some time. I think this, you can increase your volume a little bit.
Yeah, can you hear us now?
Yes, slightly, maybe closer to the mic would be better.
Yes, we.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So as I set up before we start the discussions, it would be great if you could just introduce yourselves a little bit.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. And I'm Prachi Mehta. And with me is our Executive Director, Conservation, Jayant Kulkarni.
Hello.
And we work through our organization, Wildlife Research and Conservation Society. We are based in Pune. So, and we've been working in North Canara district on elephants for last 10 years. So we'll be presenting some of the highlights of our work on this platform.
Thank you, Dr. Jayanti and sorry, Dr. Prachi and Jayant Kulkarni. As I said, new neighbors. So you titled it as new neighbors, considering that elephant-human conflict in that landscape is it a relatively recent problem, which is why you're calling it as the new neighbors? And what are the emerging nature of the problem here? This question is directed towards Dr. Prachi.
Yeah, all right. So thank you, Abhishek. So I'll just talk about this. Can I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Yes. So ours is a story of a district which is Uttar Kannada district or North Canara district, which is in the northern Karnataka. So here is this map, and for those who are not familiar, I'll just show you here that this is where we are working, and this is a border of Maharashtra, and here the Andhra Pradesh. So this is a very beautiful landscape, and as you can see, it's one of the highest forested district in Karnataka. It had about once upon a time over 80% forest area. So this is where is our study. Now we are talking about new neighbors. So this is a catchy title which was suggested, and we thought of this because of our work in this region. So let me just go to a little bit of the history of how elephants came into here in this area. This is the southern elephant population, southern India elephant population, where you have all the pockets of elephant population around here. So earlier in about 1800s, so this is what we gather from the Indian Gazetteer, that elephants, sorry, elephants from this region, from Mysore elephant population, they would travel up here to North Canara, that is Uttar Kannada district. But they were not resident population, they were migratory. They would just come and they visit it for some time, look around, and they would go back here. So it's very interesting to know that when Buchanan, one of the forest officer who was writing the Gazetteer at that time, so he talks about it that in 1820 he mentions no presence of elephants, but he says this area is full of tigers and basically tigers and leopards and gods, but no, and he says that not elephants. We don't see elephants. But after 1860s, slowly there were mentions of elephants in this area. So elephants were coming on a migratory path through Sirsi from the same region, and they would go back here. This continued for some time, and then there was this Lingamakki Dam which came on Sharavati River in Shimoga district. This dam came up in 1960s, for those who are familiar with this area's history. So when this area, the dam came up, the corridor broke for these elephants. So there's a herd which got isolated here, and they got confined to this region. They could no longer move back to their area in southern side. So the link had got disrupted, and this area then started, in that region, they started experiencing certain level of conflict. Crop raiding, mainly crop raiding, and it still continues. There are no human deaths in this area even now, as of today. Very few, rarely. In so many years that we have been there, I don't recall, I think just one case I recall in last 10 years. So this is an area only for mainly for crop damage by elephants. So I'll just come to this point again, illustrating it here, that this is from a very good paper by Nair and Gadgil. So we have reconstructed this entire scenario. This is North Canara district. This is the area. And earlier from 1872 to 1920, from historical records, I said that there were 5 elephant herds which were distributed in this region. So this is Halial, this is Yallapur, then this is this area here is the Kali Tiger Reserve, or earlier it was known as Dandeli Anshi Tiger Reserve. Many people know it as DATR. So for last 5 years, it has been known as Kali Tiger Reserve. So there were so many herds earlier, and slowly they got decimated because of the existing conflict. They were actually shot dead. So now that time, Dr. Gadgil and Nair, they conducted a survey in this area for, I think, entire Karnataka, and he illustrates it very well by interview methods, and of course they also did some trails to look out for elephant signs, and they found only few signs of the herds in this Dandeli Anshi Tiger Reserve, which is KTR, and somewhere in the Honavar. So they said that most of the elephants, and even that time, the elephants they found were shot dead on the Bank River. So they had got these evidences. Post 1980, so these are the areas now elephants had gone out from, and now again they have started as we discussed earlier, because of better protection. So elephants started populating the same area. And as you can see, very interestingly, that the elephants from 1999 onwards, 2000, they went to from Dandeli. This is the Dandeli. Now we are back in the study area here, and I am showing you a larger landscape across 3 states. That is Karnataka here, this is Goa and Maharashtra. So elephants from here started progressing northwards, and they started entering Belgaum. From Belgaum, then they started crossing the border. They went for some time to Goa, they were repelled back, and then they started settling in Maharashtra. So they had quite a struggle time in Maharashtra, because again in Maharashtra, wild elephants were not known in this region. There were only few stray, visits by the elephants, but otherwise the herds came in large numbers, so 22 to 30 earlier in 2002 and 2006. So elephants would come crossing the border. They would damage the crops. So these are all sugarcane and cash crops here in this area. So and they would go back. But after some time, and as the situation stands now, a small herd has settled now in Maharashtra. So that is thanks to Karnataka that we have wild elephants now in Maharashtra. So these are all new areas that where the elephants are settling. And one more interesting insight we've got, that from Dandeli again, the elephants are again progressing to other areas, like they are going to Sagar, Dharwad, Sirsi, which they have not gone before. So all these areas are now experiencing elephant presence. And as of now, the elephants in the study area where we are working, this is the Kali Tiger Reserve area, which I was mentioning. So now they are present in this entire landscape. I just explained this and then I stop. This is where the Dandeli Anchi Tiger Reserve, as I was talking about, the Kali Tiger Reserve. So elephants are there from mostly from February onwards till July, August. And as the crop raiding season starts, then they start, going towards all these areas. These are the reserved forest areas, Halial Division and Yellapur Division. So this is where we are, and these are all reserved territorial forests, and there are people and there are agricultural fields. So that's where they go out for crop raiding. And so this the landscape you had asked me, Abhishek. So this is the landscape. The landscape is like crop fields at the forest boundary. This is all beautiful forest, thick dense forest, semi-evergreen, evergreen forest, and you have agriculture right in the middle. So there are no linear villages. There are enclaves inside the villages, inside the forest. So for the elephants, it's very easy. You can see the attractive crops. So here the elephants stay whole day. And at night, they would just come for these easy takeaways. There is paddy, then there is sugarcane, there is coconut. And it's, as Dr. Dhananjay Mohan also pointed out, it's easy food. They do not have to go out anywhere. So this is where they come. They will eat here and then go back. So this is what I wanted to talk about, the first question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pachi. My next question is to Jayant. Apart from this growing need, this increasing conflict, this new area with elephants moving and causing conflict, what really kickstarted your initiative? When did you decide to start acting and start involving communities?
No, I think we need to keep sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, Abhishek. So actually, so we had been working on elephant. We have been studying elephants. We did a study in Kodagu around 2004 to 2006. We studied the elephants. We studied especially the human-elephant conflict situation in Kodagu. And also we did a study in West Bengal and Assam, where we studied the mitigation practices over there, and especially the practices which were being followed by the forest department in Bengal. They are like Bengal is well known for the active elephant mitigation of the elephant problem. And then also, like Prachi said earlier, we had these elephants coming from Karnataka to Maharashtra. So this was around 2002 to 2004 when elephant first came to Maharashtra. So I mean, it took everyone by surprise, and we did a study of human-elephant conflict there, and especially the problems that people were facing, and so the management which was being practices which were being carried out over there. The Maharashtra Forest Department, of course, for it was the first experience that for them also, that they were having to deal with elephants and human-elephant conflict. So based on all this information, we formed some ideas about how human-elephant could be managed in an alternative way. And especially, the Maharashtra population, what we realized is it was a continuous population with North Canara. So when we realized that, so we thought that we should actually, implement the ideas that we had formed. And especially, we had the idea of involving the community in mitigation of human-elephant conflict. So, and the Maharashtra population was quite small at that time. There were about 5 to 6 elephants there. So we thought that we should actually carry out a project for mitigation of human-elephant conflict at the source population, which was the North Canara population. So that is how we started our the project for mitigation of human-elephant conflict in North Canara.
Thank you, Jayant. Also, very interesting to know that while human-wildlife conflict is rampant across the country, and there have been many suggested mitigation measures, barriers and exclusions are one such common things that are used across the country.
Right.
What made you think of involving communities and reducing this conflict rather than going in the conventional old school?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, can you see my screen right now, Abhishek?
No, I can't.
Yeah. Just a minute.
Yeah. Yes, now I'm able to see.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see.
So I'll just give a brief overview of the practices which we saw were being implemented for mitigation of human-elephant conflict. So some of the common strategies, I mean, the earlier speakers also have referred to these. So I'll just repeat some of them. So there was a reliance, like what you said, there was a reliance on barriers, which I mean we call engineering structures. So which were the main structures that we saw were the elephant-proof trenches, where we dig a deep trench which elephants cannot cross. So that was one of the major sort of practices which was being implemented. Especially we saw that in Karnataka a lot. That elephant-proof trenches were being created, and then there were also in Maharashtra. Also, seeing the Karnataka example, the Maharashtra Forest Department had created extensive network of elephant-proof trenches. Then there were the solar-powered electric fences, which were like installed by the Forest Department and expected to be managed by the community. And then in some cases, we saw that there were cement and rubber walls, where they could not construct EPTs on very hard surfaces, or it was not possible to create solar-powered electric fences. The rubber walls were being created. So all of these barriers, they sought to control or restrict elephant movement. And as opposed to that, so I'll just present a kind of strategy which we thought of. So the first, if you look at the figure A over here, where we see a forest and which is surrounded by a barrier, it could be an elephant-proof trench or a solar-powered electric fence. So the idea or the logic here was that we would restrict the elephant inside the forest, right? But in practice, that does not happen. There are so many ways that elephants can come out of there. There are streams. There are roads. The community wants to go inside there, so they create pathways across the EPTs. Sometimes solar power fences are cut by the community themselves because they want the cattle to go inside the forest for grazing. So we found that, and elephants also want to move. Elephants are landscape animals. They don't like to be constrained in one place. So they also want to move out of the forest. In some cases, to go to other forest blocks, or for visiting the agricultural fields for crop breeding. So that's why the strategy A often fails, right? Then we go to strategy B, where elephant-proof trenches are created. Generally, elephant-proof trenches are created across the landscape. So typically, it could be at the district border, where one district does not want the elephant to come inside from the neighboring district. So you are actually trying to prevent the movement of elephants. Sometimes it's even done on the state border also, or the range border. So no one wants elephants. They want it to be somebody else's baby, not their problem. So, but elephants still manage to find their way through, but at a lot of cost. So there is a lot of conflict with elephants. In fact, if some people know about the situation in West Bengal, Orissa, where the forest departments, I mean, sometimes it's like a war, where the forest departments on both sides are trying to push the elephant back into the place where they came from. So this one also, there's a tremendous cost to the elephants as well, and they face a lot of stress. They are being pushed from one area to another. So this is the kind of strategy B which is being followed. So what we thought of was the strategy C, where you have your village embedded in a matrix where elephants are there. So you let the elephants go wherever they want to. So what you do is you protect yourself. You protect your village, you protect your crops, and let the elephants do their thing. Let them go where they want to. So this is where we conceive that there's a strong role for the community, and the way you keep the village out of it could be in the form of barriers, but there are other ways, more simpler, cheaper solutions which the community can implement themselves. So based on this kind of logic or this strategy is how we started involving the community into the project. That's basically with this idea we started our project in North Canada. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
So,
I think, sorry.
So this is a well-known picture of a elephant, crossing EPT. It's actually, you can see that it's crawling up from across the EPT, and you can see another. There's so many examples where the mother pushes the baby across the EPT. So because of this, or they pull another elephant up across the EPT. And now I'll show a video which was taken up project area. Of an elephant crossing elephant-proof trench. I hope it's visible. So there's this elephant which is at the just at one side, and now you can see it crossing over. It's going to the other side of the EP. Could you see that, Abhishek?
Yes. It's buffering slightly, but I think we get the gist of it.
They managed to find their way across barriers, and so we said we should do something else other than barriers. And especially like Prachi said, we focused our work on crop protection. So we thought of different ways of protecting the crops from elephants. Yeah, thank you.
Right. I think a lot of us have come across such examples where elephants have managed to cross trenches, have EPTs and everything. I think that's what your work also exemplifies. Coming to a very pertinent question that we have been talking, Dr. Kumar also mentioned that one solution does not fit all, and it has to be a very problem-specific solution, and which is what you looked at. I think one, in my opinion, one biggest challenge is convincing people, is sensitizing people to coexist with something that has caused damage over the years to their life, their property, their income. So how did you manage to do that? How did you manage to convince the local communities to coexist with these animals?
Yeah, I'll request you, Prachi, to take that.
Yes.
Take that question. So yeah, that was a very challenging task. So when we started, what happens, generally as it was also talked by Dr. Mohan, that this elephants or any animals are considered to be department's cattle. So farmers always believe that this is not our responsibility, and this department has to do. So department takes the onus of protecting the crops or protecting the farm and people on themselves. Now, what we realize is there is very little involvement of local people, and the people have to be also involved in decision making. So where do you want to put the barrier? Where are the elephant entry points? Where the elephants are coming from? What can you do? So we started talking to the people, and the journey was quite hilarious, interesting, and difficult, I would say. So initially, we would just go meet people, and they would look at us like, oh, so another, you are going to give us now what? They would just ask us, so how much money are you giving us for putting an EPT? I mean, we will put an EPT, or how much ex gratia will you offer to us? So you will put things for us. So we said, no, we are not going to do anything for you. We will train you. We will train you, and let's do this together. So that they found it little, amusing, and they would. So we would go out at night, be there with them while guarding the fields, and they would look at me or my team and say, they must be getting about 1 lakh rupees an hour. Why are otherwise they coming to guard our crop fields? I mean, basically, they really did not understand this concept that they have to do it together. And so that is how we started gradually, demonstrating, like, seeing what really works. So we started putting trip alarms, started the night guarding with them. We also started teaching them some of this chili-based deterrent. So of course, it was like considered a big joke by a lot of people, even then or even now, that they think that no, it doesn't work. But I feel in this entire case, persistence, is very important. So yes, so that hand holding is very important. So now it's been 10 years when we are working in the same landscape, almost similar methodologies. So I'll just explain, a few things, the pictures which I have put here. And as I said earlier, we just went and installed and demonstrated these units. And then as people saw the results, they started coming forward. And for people to participate on a larger scale, the methods have to be low cost, they have to be low tech. Otherwise, it's very difficult, or they will always remain dependent on an outside agency like an NGO or a forest department. And see, guarding of the fields is not something and none of these methods we have invented newly. I mean, some of them are already existing. We got something from Africa where a lot of research has been going on. But something like, say, night guarding, most people do that, But now, so with the changing scenario, an economic scenario, and people are moving, the younger generations moving to big cities. They are not interested in staying back in the villages. So older people are finding it difficult to do night guarding or sitting in the their traditional huts in the farm, which is very risky. If the elephants come, there could be mortalities. So we taught them safer. I mean, we revived the tradition. I wouldn't say taught them. We revived the tradition of night guarding, and with better facility. Like we offered, we told them, we should keep this kind of a tarpaulin. We should have a torch with them. So even now, most farmers do not have a torch. So they use a mobile torch. Those who have, which is hardly any light. So staying in an elephant landscape, staying in the forest, you need to have these accessories with you to keep yourself safe. So vigilance, we started focusing on vigilance. Then we had this trip alarm. So very simple, doorbell attached with, most of you know about it. I'm just making, saying, it's very simple contraption. It just gives an alarm. It's an alert for the farmer. So that it costs, I feel like some 300 rupees or 400 rupees at the most for 400 meter with the entire unit. So the farmers themselves started coming and contributing to that, and they started buying it. We wanted that to happen so that they take responsibility. Otherwise, doling out free gifts or free meals, it does not really work in our opinion. Chili-based deterrents. There are many ways which we can use chilies. Like this is called chili grass churi in the local language, grass bundle. So with this, it has chili and tobacco. It's 9 feet long, and if this is prepared earlier and it is kept in the boundary, it will go on for 5 to 6 hours. It causes minimal discomfort for the elephant. It sneezes, it coughs. That is enough for it to just change its path and it goes somewhere else. So that is what we are. And then there are many variations of chili deterrents, like chili bricks are there, chili smoke is, chili tin is there. So all these things are demonstrated to the farmers, and then they use this. We are also encouraging beehive fences. So this is modeled after Dr. Lucy King's work in Africa. So when I had met her in 2009, then we discussed this, and then she gave me the call of Apis mellifera that time. And first we just tried with the call, and it was amazing to see that tuskers with their tails raised. They retreated within about a minute or so. So that the farmers are very happy. But as we all know, elephants are very smart. They will learn it's an empty threat. Nothing is coming out of behind us. And also, apart from this, we also conducted some trials with Forest Department permission on captive elephants. And we saw that immediately the sound of bees had got elephants a little uncomfortable, and they moved away, thinking the bees are going in their eyes, and they started flapping their ears and moving, shaking their heads. So this, after doing these experiments for a few years, then we started putting it actually out in log hives. So to make it cheap, we started doing it in logs, the fallen logs which you will find in the forest. And as you can see, it takes time. It doesn't really happen overnight. We have to really work on the research, how to get, and we are depending on natural colonization. We do not, release bees there. So these are all natural colonized logs, as you can see, and we put this kind of fences at the elephant entry point. There are two advantages. Now, I have been asked this many times earlier that it has not worked in many of the areas, or these bees don't sting or they do not come out at night, because we are working with Apis serena, which is a species which is found here. The thing is that I am still working on the causes, what has really worked. But the elephants, if this is a bee fence here, has not come from this area. Is it maybe because of the contraction what it sees here? Is it because of the smell of the honey? There is, or maybe it can hear the bees. I don't know. But they have not really come from here, and that has benefited the farmer by keeping away the elephants, and they have earned from extracting the honey. So farmers are quite happy with this, and we are still working on this. So I feel that it's encouraging to do some more experimentation on this, and it's a potential method. The beehive fences. We are also using some farm-based deterrents, this light, this kind of light and sound effect. So it looks quite intimidating at night. If many farmers do this, they do not throw this. It's just a ball which they swing with the fire-lit ball, but they are never thrown at the elephants. And that looks quite scary with the whoosh sound. And of course, apart from all this, we are also doing some livelihood programs. So we are giving some elephant themed handicraft. We are training the women in this aspect. So that whatever some to offset some kind of damage which they have been incurring, and also to contribute positively in elephant conservation. So basically, it's an integration of all these methods and many more which we are working with in this area. So I hope this answers.
Yes, Dr. Pachi, I think it does answer the question that how we can involve. And in fact, it leads up to the follow-up question that, as you said, you have been working there for the last 10 years, which is quite a long time. And what changes have you seen from the year that you started till now? And do you and you already mentioned that these are low-cost interventions, and these are not literally freebies that the community gets dependent on. So how does it become sustainable over the next 10 years? It's already been sustainable, say, for this current 10 years. And how in future it's going to be sustainable? So that question is to Jayant or Prachi, who would like to answer?
I'll take that question, Abhishek.
Yes, sure.
So, what we when we started the project, we worked with the farmers. We would approach the farmers. We tell them about the techniques. We describe the approach we are going to follow. And what would generally happen is that out of a group of maybe 10 or 20 farmers, a few of the farmers will show interest. Okay, this looks useful. This looks interesting. I'm willing to try it. So then we worked with the farmers who were willing and cooperative. And what we found is that these farmers, they actually benefited. So when we implemented these techniques that Prachi described in the last slide, so maybe it was a trip alarm at the boundary of his farm, or it was a chili-based deterrent. It worked, and it helped the farmers to reduce their crop damage. And we saw a change in the attitude of the people. Gradually, the people who used to, just laugh and or would sometimes even mock at us. So gradually, they started accepting these methods and they started implementing. So now, so over the years, we had nearly more than 500 farmers, in almost 50 villages, participating in the project, in our project. So this was the change that we saw, that people were willing to try out the techniques that we implemented. So after so lately what we realize is that the farmers who actually implement these techniques, they benefit, but his neighbor may not benefit from this because he has not protected his farm, and then elephants have a entry point into the village, and sometimes they come from another farm and they damage the crops. So what we realize is that we have to take a community approach firstly, and we have to institutionalize the process. So the forest department has these a wonderful institution called the Village Forest Committee, VFCs, in as it is known as Karnataka, or the Eco Development Committees, the EDCs. So we thought that this is the ideal opportunity to, or this is the ideal medium to institutionalize the process. So we approached the forest department and said, implement this as a model. And the forest department also readily agreed to this. So right now what we are working on is implementing this model through the VFCs and the EDCs. We have been doing this now for 1 year. The forest department has contributed funds to the nearly 15 EDCs. And then these EDCs, they implement these techniques as a EDC activity or a VFC activity. And this has really benefited because then the entire village is sort of covered by this technique, and it becomes actually the community takes ownership for the activities which have been implemented there, and we found that it makes a tremendous difference. So I'll just show the example of one village, this Sulali village. Up to 2017, individual farmers had been implementing the crop protection techniques that we had been suggesting. And we found that there was a gradual decrease in the amount of crop damage. Then from 2018-19, we started suggesting to them that we should be implementing these techniques through the EDCs, and which was actually, it was finally implemented in 2019. And that year we saw a tremendous drop in the crop damage, and now we are actually working to strengthen this institutionalization of this process through the VFCs and EDCs with tremendous cooperation from the forest department. So we hope that the forest department takes over this whole concept and agrees to implement it through the EDCs. So this year will actually be kind of test of the success of this method, and we hope we actually achieve good results over here, right? So yes, thank you. So this is what we hope to be, this is the direction in which we see that the project is going.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Prachi and Jayant, for a very enlightening talk. And people did have some questions in the plenaries, which I feel must have been answered. For example, Upamanyu Chakrabarti did ask about elephant conflict in a new area, which has not seen how to manage that, which is becoming a serious issue in North Bengal, for example. So they can definitely get in touch with you. You can connect it outside and maybe think of what can be done. Similarly, somebody did ask about the beehives. I think beehive fences. So I think that has also been addressed in your talk. Yes, so it's a very interesting model, and we will. I hope you'll stick around for the questions and discussion.
Yeah, of course, we'll be on.
And we'd like to thank WTI for giving this opportunity. It's a wonderful session, a lot of learning for us, and to understand what's happening in the other sessions. So thank you very much. And we would like to take this opportunity to thank our team members and funding agencies also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks a lot for taking out time in a busy schedule and coming on board with this and actually imparting good knowledge to people. Thank you, and we will come back to you for the questions after the last session for today. So,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek. Thank you.
The next session from now southern India. Now we move towards northeast India, Manas National Park, where Wildlife Trust of India, in fact, has been working on a project to reduce human-wildlife conflict, which is in Manas, Assam. And for that, we have Dr. Mayuk Chatterjee, who heads our Human-Wildlife Conflict Mitigation Division in WTI, and Mr. Sanatan Deka, who's working in the field, who's a sociologist, biologist, is a multi-purpose man, and he's a local, he's from that landscape to talk about the conflict, the successes, and what are the challenges that they face. So Dr. Mayuk and Sanatan Da, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So yes. So without Mayuk, I think you are breaking a little bit. Can you hear us? Hello, Mayuk.
I can hear you.
Yes.
I think Sanatan's having some problem with the internet.
No. Okay. I can hear Mayuk.
Yeah. Okay, I think yeah, it's a slight bandwidth problem, and I think it should recover. So Mayuk and Sanatan, my colleagues from WTI, are going to talk about conflict in Manas, as I mentioned. So I'd like to start with Sanatan to just describe what landscape are we talking about when we say Manas, the area that we're talking about where WTI has a project on human-wildlife conflict, human-elephant conflict mitigation, and what is the level of human-elephant conflict in this landscape? So, Sanatanda?
Okay. Well, Abhishek. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Sanatan Deka. I have been working with WTI since 2010. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. And see, WTI has been working in this landscape over 15 years. And Abhishek, if you can show me the landscape map, it will be very helpful to explain the kind of diversity.
Yes, Mayuk, I think you have those. Yeah, okay, Mayuk.
So you can see the landscape. It is situated in the eastern Himalayan slopes and various forest types like semi-evergreen forest, alluvial grasslands, savanna woodland, then Bhabor terai, sulfur type, and semi-evergreen. So the landscape is also known for various conservation milestones. Like it was in 1973, Manas was declared as a tiger reserve. Again in 1985, it was declared as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And in 1989, it was declared as Biosphere Reserve. And 1990, the core area of Manas Tiger Reserve, it was declared as National Park. And in 2003, Chirang and Ripu, covering 2,600 square kilometer, it was declared Elephant Reserve. And recently in 2016, this part covering 350 square kilometer, it was declared Manas National Park. So the entire landscape harbors splendid wildlife like over 477 then 200 species of butterflies, species of whales. So if we see, we conducted and we restricted our HCC activities in around facilitation to Manas National Park. So we conducted a survey all the 60 villages from villages towards the site of Manas National Park and up to here. So we found that the conflict in this area, especially this landscape, it was a deep forest, and few years back it was like people there was land use. Now it is a human settlement area, but we have seen the elephants use this area to move from east to west and west to east. But if we see the conflict level, we have seen there is an increasing conflict even in the southern side. So literally, it is very interesting. If you see the straight line from east to west, there is straight, the boundary, southern boundary is quite straight. And there are about 60 villages having a population of around 20,000 people. And we have seen that in a year, 3 people are killed by wild elephant only in this area, and around 4 to 5 people every year killed by injured by wild elephant, and around 650 quintals of crop damage every village every year. So this is the quantum of HCC, which is quite problematic now. So finally, we have decided to start our HCC activities in starting from western side National Park and eastern part of this first edition to Manas National Park.
Thank you, Sanatanda. I think your network is slightly affected, so maybe perhaps you can switch off your video, and that will improve the voice at least. So Okay, so that talks about the landscape when we say Manas National Park and the region that this project has been initiated. But my next question is to Dr. Mayuk. When we talk about human-wildlife conflict, human-elephant conflict in Assam, there are the names like Golpara and Sonitpur actually come up more often because of the quantum of the conflict there. And somebody did raise this point during the plenary as well, that in Assam this kind of there. So what made you consider a place like Manas as compared to Golpara and Sonitpur to initiate this project? You'll have to unmute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Abhishek. So yes, indeed. So Goalpara and Sonitpur are two areas that are often in the news as well with respect to HEC, because things have pretty much boiled out of proportions there. You know, when it comes to Manas, as Sanatan said, Wildlife Trust of India and many other organizations, the Forest Department, have been working in the Manas landscape for a very long time, trying to restore it back from the decimation it had faced many years back, because of which it was removed from the, it was basically put on a danger, World Heritage Site in danger list. Now that has been removed, and that's because of all the hard work that's been put in by many organizations, including us. And we did not really want, therefore, Manas to become like Goalpara and Sonitpur when it came to HEC. And because, you know, that would result in everything getting dismantled, all the work that has been put into getting Manas back. So primarily, that is why we thought that this was one area where HEC seemed to be an emergent issue. And it would be therefore very wise to actually begin interventions now, along with all the other things that we've been doing for almost 15 years now there. And sort of, if you can say, nip it at the bud, you know, the problem of HEC. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayuk. That makes sense that you, considering Manas, the investment of people that has gone there to select that. Just the talk before you, when Dr. Prachi and Jayant were talking about how barriers or how infrastructures or engineering things that they mentioned did not work to reduce the conflict in the landscape that they were working in. It did seem to work in Manas. And would you like to talk about why did you actually think of using barriers and as the best option? How did community get involved in those barriers?
Sure. A few pictures.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So as Sanatan touched upon already, you know, we did not really decide anything by ourselves. What we did was, back in 2018, when we began this initiative along with Chester Zoo, we started surveying these 60 villages around the first edition, because the first edition was a patch that had just been annexed to Manas National Park, and therefore it became it was a little more important for us to start focusing there. And when we started surveying and asking people what was the problem like, what was the quantum, what their attitudes were, we also asked them like what they thought were the solutions. Now, very interestingly, almost 98% of responses from all the 60 villages that we surveyed, people said that the best thing and perhaps the only thing that works is a fence. Now, having said that, what I would also like to tell our audience is that if you see the map of Manas, it has a nice southern, straight southern edge along the first edition. Whereas, on the western edge, there's a big gap. Now, all of this area, if people can see my pointer moving, is inhabited by humans and with very little bit of, forest patches in between. Now, when people said that the fence was the best thing to do, we went back and asked them that, there were already fences in place many years back. The government had done it, some organizations had done it. And so if you see this red line along the southern edge, this entire stretch was fenced. So we went and asked them that, fair enough, all of you are saying that fence is what is going to work, but then why did this fence not work that was already put in place? that is when people started telling us stories about how they did not think the fence was to keep elephants out. They thought the fence was to keep them from going in. So people couldn't go in. So invariably what people did, they would nip the wires, and eventually the entire stretch of the fence fell. Now, the remaining part of Manas National Park, the authorities have still been maintaining the fence pretty well, but this part, there is no more, there is no fence anymore. Now, although people all across said they need a fence, we also did not just take it on face value. We also looked at certain ecological aspects. If by putting a fence, is it blocking elephant movement? And just a second, let me just. Yeah, so, we did this extensive survey again to actually look at signs of elephant presence, occurrence of human-elephant conflict. And as you can see, this is the Western Gap that you see, to the west of first edition of Manas National Park. Now, this has a very high level of conflict, but it also has a very high level of elephant movement, with elephants moving back and forth from Chirang to Manas first edition and so on. So obviously, then we started thinking about whether a fence can be put here or not. But conversely, on the southern edge, when we looked at the data, elephants weren't going anywhere really. They were all coming out, raiding the crops maybe for a kilometer and then going back. And so then we said that since people do want a fence, this is the stretch where we perhaps can think about putting a fence. But then again, we went back to people and we started talking to them about the kind of design that they thought could work. And what came out was the hanging fence seemed to be the most preferable option because it did still allow people to go and to graze their cattle or collect NTFP. But it would then prevent elephants from coming out and raiding crops. But what was very crucial in our initiative was we did not want to build a fence and just give it to people. Because this landscape itself had an example where that was done, and then people were the ones who actually destroyed the fence. So the dialogue that we started essentially revolved around trying to get people convinced of building the fence themselves and managing it as well over time, because our main goal was sustainability, that if we do end up doing certain mitigation measures, they need to last. And one of the only ways that it can really last is people, as Dr. Dhananjay Mohan also said, that if people own it, if people believe that the problem is theirs and the solution is also done by them and for them. So it is a classic, by the people, for the people thing here. And that is what we had aimed for. So essentially, after the entire dialogue, we narrowed down on this hanging fence. And we also, got people to agree to learn to build this fence themselves and maintain it themselves. As you can see, we've got local villagers building it all by themselves here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayuk. I think that's a very important thing whenever we're talking about the community mitigation measure, that the community needs to own it and needs to have that ownership. I had asked a similar question to Jayant and Prachi as well, that how difficult, what was the journey like? I bet Sanatan Da can talk about that. How difficult, how easy, or how was the overall journey to bring in these people to learn to own this problem and the solution? So, Sanatan Da, would you like to explain something?
Yes. Abhishek, yes, it is really difficult to make people understand that the problem is for them, and they have to find some solution. As Mayuk said, they gave us the and this year turn how they program. So in the very beginning, focus group had cities with villages, and among the villagers, institutions, including stakeholders here. So coming to the local communities, we formed the eco-development committees in the fringe villages, and also reformed the old eco-development committees. Along the villagers, they form some fence management, and after that, they identify local people who learn, who can bring the technology, who can implement, and who can also manage and look after the fence for long years. And people say that the main cause behind the failure was that people used to manage the fence themselves, but they saw that not it was not the work of everybody's. So this time, every village they have kept what fully responsible maintain that particular, like where that we together, the villagers install for 5-meter fence, the village 8 villagers, they have kept 4 persons. And these 4 persons, they are maintaining the records, they were given training, and technical inputs were also given by Sestarju and the vendors. They've identified the vendors, we helped them identifying the vendors, and they had communicated with the vendors, and we brought the materials together, and the persons, those who were trained up, they implemented. And even before implementation, like the villagers, all the villagers, they went, they cleared the line, fence line before installation, and also they helped those persons who were identified to installation of the fence. And from the day one, the best thing they have started that every household, they are contributing some amount, which is to be paid to the person who is looking after the fence regularly. Apart from that, we have identified some people, the villagers have identified some people as Hathi watchers, those who helps the villagers in chasing the elephants back peacefully, so that no human is injured or even no harm to the wildlife. So in this way, we are trying to trying to change the attitude towards wild animals. Also, we implemented other programs at the same time. Like with KVK, we provided them the soil health card. We implemented various alternate livelihood programs so that the people who solely depend forest resources as livelihood, they get alternate livelihoods. At the same time, we provided them LPG connection, new LPG connection so that get clean cooking energy options. Apart from that, recently we started a second barrier fence. We have the villagers, we identified some villagers along the fence, those who cite as a biological along the fence. And in Manas National Park, many areas already getting very good income out of citrus. Also, in many cases, it is helping reducing the human elephant conflict in Manas National Park. So the experience that we have implemented area from the very end. Now people, during lockdown time, we have seen that they are maintaining the fence very well. The person who are engaged by the villagers, they are maintaining the records very well. And the fence management committee, they check the regularly. Also, they check the person and any technical they contact us, and also they contact the vendors, the technical expert. So we hope that this is the best strategy because people, they have considered this entire program, the entire fence as their own property, and we believe that this fence will be maintained by the villagers.
Thank you, Sanatanda.
Yes.
Yes, I think Sanatanda being in Assam, which is facing floods right now, his internet connection is a little erratic.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so
Yes,
I,
yes.
I did switch off your video so that the audio becomes a little more clearer. Thank you, thank you. I think it was insightful. Now coming to the next thing, that when you said you have implemented this project, and in any project or any intervention, monitoring is very important. That how do you see whether a project or an intervention has been successful? So have you established? The question is to both Mayuk or Sanatan. Either of them can choose to answer. What are the measures that you have put up to monitor the progress and see the successes or failures of the
Yeah.
project?
Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Sanatan, shall I go first or?
Yes, yes, yes.
Sure.
Please,
Uh,
Mayur.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Abhishek. So yes, of course, I mean, as you say, monitoring is absolutely crucial. And uh, like other projects of ours, this project also, we had planned out a whole lot of aspects that we need to monitor in detail. So for example, that entire stretch that I showed you, that's about a 25-30 kilometer stretch. And the overall long-term goal is to, create that entire fence and also buffer with other activities like, what Sanatan spoke about, having these Hathi watches, because no matter what fence you put, there are going to be breaches. And when there are breaches, you need people to maintain the fence. You need people to peacefully drive elephants back, so that there are no casualties and minimal damages. On the other side, on the western fringe, there are other initiatives like providing alternative livelihoods to people who are collecting, say, fuel wood. Fuel wood is one of the major things that are extracted in bulk from the forests of Manas for commercial sale, and the project is also targeting that. So when it comes to monitoring, we are monitoring every bit of it. How much change is there in a person's earnings, for example, when the person adopts livelihood. The project is also monitoring, the forest path use to see how frequently people are still going in. The fence monitoring committee monitors the fence, collects quantitative data and passes it on to us. What we've also done is, so pretty much everything, all of this data is collected by the villagers. They also extensively patrol the fence, which is about 5 kilometers for now, and to assess, how many times elephants have tried to breach the fence, how many times they've succeeded, how many times they fail, and that data they pass on to us. So since October 2019 till now, there have been about 68 attempts to breach the fence, and 56 times they fail. So that gives us some measure of the efficacy of the fence. They've also collected data on whether the fence is deflecting elephants and elephants are trying to go around the fence and get into other villages. So all of that information is coming from the field. I will let Sanatan elaborate more on the other measures that we are using for, say, alternative livelihoods or other initiatives in the project. But for the fence, we have meticulous data on incursions, on breaches, and how many times it's fallen, which part of the fence is damaged, and how quickly it's repaired, and all of that. Yeah. Thank you. Over to Sanatan.
So Mayuk, what we have done also, we have prepared my plans. All that's wonder that have done with us, and apart from that, they have already contributed, and they are trying to create a corpus fund so that they can maintain the fence for long years. Even we leave also continue as so wonderful villagers already started.
Sanatan, are you there still?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Some problem with the network.
If you can also talk about the other initiatives of like forest path use monitoring and all that.
Yes, yes, yes. And the best thing is that we have seen around more than 8. They go inside the newly created park. They collect firewood, and if we see the cattle grazing pressure, more than 99% people put their cattle graze inside the park. So there are huge amount of anthropogenic pressure over the forest resources. So we had a series of discussion with the local Bazaar committee, with the EDC, with the village council development committee, all these cause. Recently, during COVID-19 lockdown period, 2 persons were killed by elephant inside the park when they go to collect payload. So these facts, and instead of putting their life on risks inside the park, they should engage in sustainable. And keeping this in mind, we set up one weaving center in a village in number 1 border, and it is very encouraging that these women, these 25 women, they trained up. Now they are using the jacquard machine as well, and they also encouraging the young girls, and more than 10 young girls they have motivated. And we have seen those girls, you go inside for collection of payload. You see the seriousness of the issue. Now they are engaged in the handloom, and they are a dignified life and very good income out of weaving, which is also a very good example of like Atmanirbharshil, as our Prime Minister is appealing the whole nation. So apart from that, we are trying to work with block development officer, how we can bring all the governmental schemes and like take people and minimize gaps between us and the people, like NG and MREGA. We have this information that can, in going inside, you can apply, help you. Like many of the villagers, they did not know how to go to apply for new LPG. We have help from our side, help many families to get LPG access. And this has helped. And we have seen that 5 individual families who fully dependent on forest resource as a source of livelihood, 99% out of 35.
I think Sanatanda is disconnected because of bad connectivity. Mayuk, would you like to add something? You're muted. Right?
Yeah, so in short, what Sanatan was trying to convey was, so there's been monitoring of not just the earnings of people, but also the contributions, the number of times they still are going to the forest, the amount of fuel wood or the NTFP that they're collecting, so all of that data essentially is coming in, which is feeding into our understanding of how well the project initiatives are working, and also therefore allows us to make course corrections along the way. As Dr. Dhananjay Mohan said very rightly that things need to evolve, and unless you have that very detailed level of monitoring and data coming in from various facets, it's very difficult to actually decide how you're going to do the course correction and where. So that is absolutely crucial, and I think all of these initiatives to mitigate conflict is a game of patience. One needs to really go for slow cooked food rather than 2-minute Maggi noodles when it comes to conflict mitigation.
And Mayuk, one very interesting story. I want to add a very interesting story. If we want to show our result, you see, recently from September to May this year, last 9 months, 4 persons were killed by wild hens, just 7 kilometers away from our. But of killing or injury by wild elephant. So these are the result of success.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Mayuk and Sanatanda. That was also very interesting talk, and to see what even it was eye opener for me, despite working with WTI and sitting next to Mayuk for so many years. But it's a good thing, and that brings our session to the day one Living with the Wild series, Living with the Elephants, to an end. We are already about 15 minutes over time, so we can't take too many questions, although there are a lot of questions and a lot of interesting discussion points that I have noted down. I've also sent a message just now on the chat that I urge people who may have specific things to ask the respective panelists and speakers to get in touch with them directly, engage with them, and find out more how their projects work, how their interventions work, and things like that. If all the speakers for today, Dr. Anand Kumar, Prachi Mehta, Mayuk, Jayant, all of them are here, then I would like to take just one question each that I have noted down. Is Dr. Anand here? Yes, sir. Okay, so there were a few questions that came on YouTube which I thought were relevant. One of the things that people have asked is, by mitigating the conflict in Hassan, has the human-elephant conflict translocated to some other region, nearby region?
No. So if you look at all the kinds of facilities, what we have is to warn people in advance. So there is no way that conflicts in this landscape will spill over to other landscapes.
Other landscapes, right. Great. And people have also asked you how cost-effective monetary-wise it can be implemented, and I think they can get in touch with you. And you have already shared the link, so in which your contact address and everything is there, so people can directly get in touch with you to understand how this can be done. Are there similar initiatives in Wayanad, in Kerala, that you are aware of?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So in Wayanad, we had the department, Kerala Forest Department, where they showed a lot of interest to replicate SMS systems and digital display board. We helped them.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. The next question is to Dr. Prachi and Jayant. The question is related to the new proposed rail line close to Dandeli. The person has asked, does that develop a possibility of the elephant herd getting isolated further, or increase in crop damage in the isolated areas? Have these herds been identified, movement pattern noted, and is there a possibility of reduction in damage or population management?
So yes, this is a very relevant question. Unfortunately, yes, this the railway line is really not called for. I mean, I feel it could have been avoided. It's going right through inside the forest, and there have been many attempts to oppose it. And I feel it is going to definitely affect the movement, because the elephants do move, as you have shown in the map. They move radiate from that area, and it will unfortunately impact and increase the escalate. So elephant kills also, yeah. We're very worried about the elephant, kills on the railway line. So there are some major costs and concerns which we have.
Yes. I think with this will cause some problem later. So it's good to look at the risks right away. The second question, of course, as I had mentioned earlier, is on the beehive successes that you have seen, and because in Sri Lanka and Africa that has been successful to a great extent. What is the comment on the successes of beehive fences in India?
So Abhishek, I have also heard in other forums that any other studies they tried it and they find it's not really helping them. So in our case, it has helped, and we have been doing this interstate workshops where we invite people from other states and we train them, how we are doing it. So the response we get from them is that yes, it has colonized and we are getting some respite. But in other study areas, what is the actual case and the situation? I do not know. So if somebody wants to discuss, I'll be very happy to discuss and engage.
Great. That sounds good.
I'd just like to add one comment here that for beehives to succeed, it needs ownership from the farmers. So the farmers adjacent to whose field it's being implemented, he has to actually do some kind of maintenance and work on it actively. So it does work if the farmer actually takes personal interest in it, and and they do get some benefit from it.
Right, like any other community program, they
Yes.
have to own it and they have to keep it sustainable.
Right,
in,
exactly.
in that sense. Right, thank you. One more follow-up question that Roshan just asked was whether the herds that may be affected by the railway lines close to Dandeli be identified right away, and HEC problem can be predicted and mitigated from right away.
That's a very good suggestion. And actually, we are working, but because of the lockdown, we are activities have come to a halt
Yes.
now. Yeah, this needs to be taken up. It's a very good suggestion.
Thank you, Ronak, and thank you. To Mayuk and Sanatan, so one question that came up on YouTube was that why choose barriers? Does it stop the seasonal migration of elephants? And what about their corridors?
Yeah. So
Mayuk, yeah.
yeah, so it's a good question. So as I said, and I don't know if it went through because of poor internet, is that, I mean, we did not decide to put a barrier through and throughout. It was very consciously we worked on where a barrier could be put. And as I said, on the western fringe where we actually found evidence, hard data to show that elephants are moving across. From first edition of Manas to Chirang Reserve Forest. There we very clearly said that, barriers are perhaps not the thing to go for. But on the southern edge, elephants don't really move and migrate anywhere. They just come out to raid the crops south of Manas and then just go back. So it's about a foray of maybe 1 kilometer or so. And therefore we decided, and there was already a fence that had been put by the government 5-6 years back. Which had fallen off because people did not want it. And that is why we said, okay, we'll redo the fence, but we'll make it a people's fence on the southern edge, but on the western edge, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that was a follow-up was on the fact of corridor to the east, that how does it affect? Yeah. The second thing somebody did ask that what are the directions given to the local stakeholders once the elephant group breaches the fence?
Okay, so is Sanatan there? If he wants to take it, or I can take it as well. I think Sanatan is out.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So see, as Sanatan and I said, we have instituted what we call as Hathi Watchers. They equate to what Dr. Anand Kumar called as the Rapid Response Team, or some people call it the Primary Response Team. Essentially, these are a group of people from different villages who are trained to drive elephants using very passive methods. Again, the methods come from people themselves. So when we did the initial workshops and we asked people that what can be done, so let's say the fence is there and the fence is breached, or say there's an area where there is no fence and elephants come in, what do you do? How can you not actually become aggressive? How can you prevent crowds, and how can you still get the elephant to go back? So people came up with simple things, like they said, long back an organization had given us some torches, and if you just sort of flash the light on elephants, the most elephants will just start veering away and going back. So these kind of things. Some people said that if you just burst some crackers at a distance, elephants know that that's not the direction to go in. So then we started taking these ideas and then started developing these volunteers from villages as Hathi Watchers. We also tried to tell them about elephant behavior, that how do you read the behavior of elephants? Okay, when is an elephant in an aggressive mood, and when is it not? So all of that have been going on in the project as well. It's very difficult to tell all the villagers not to do something, but and therefore what we have done is we have instituted these volunteers who are villagers themselves, and therefore can also talk to other villagers in a much more informal way and tell them not to crowd, because see, crowding and mobbing is something that happens invariably, and often that is what leads to mishaps. And of course, another thing is we've also told people about precautions. A number of deaths that Sanatan was talking about have happened here, because people have been walking through some village path in the night and there's an elephant there, or somebody's drunk and is traveling in the night. So there are various simple precautions that people can take to actually avoid such encounters. So all that is also being imparted to villagers here.
Yeah, thank you, Mayuk. I think The last question for the session, which sort of applies to all three, and all three can just add all the three panel speakers groups can add on, is what just came up, is that what are the existing gaps when we talk about engaging communities for conflict mitigation? What are the existing gaps, and how can we fill these gaps with respect to educating, training, right from a simple elephant biology, ecology to mitigation techniques, maintaining fences, etc. So each of you can just give one pointer that if there has been a gap that you have addressed, or is there a gap that needs to be addressed. So starting with Dr. Ananda Kumar.
See, in a human-elephant interactions, one has to look at the balancing approach. So if you look at all the mitigation measures, they are meant for people, nothing for elephants. Yeah. So it's very critical to understand that when we implement certain measures, we are expecting elephants to positively respond to the systems.
Right.
If we don't understand what the elephants are actually doing in terms of their behavior, and it becomes very incomplete measure.
Right.
So we really need to understand that balancing thing, taking both elephants and people into consideration.
Right.
So otherwise it will become only one-side game. So
Absolutely.
that's not good.
Absolutely. Dr. Prachi, Jayant, would you like to add anything?
So I would say long-term hand-holding is required. Training is required because there are very new areas for when people how one deals with it. So I think long-term presence of an NGO or a department staff or volunteers, as you have done in WTI, you have people working there. That is very important as an interface. So that is my point. Absolutely. All right. So that's it.
Good point. Good point. Mayuk, Sanatanda?
Yeah, thanks. So my point was in line with what Prachi also mentioned. Often conservation battles are long drawn battles, and patience is the key. And one needs to definitely get married to the landscape and the problems therein to actually really try and solve the issues. Unfortunately, the trend has been, especially for NGOs and researchers, you get like these 3-year grants or 2-year grants, and then, you want to create an impact in just 2 years. And that is often very, very far-fetched. So I think the entire mindset of the community that's working to mitigate conflict needs to change, which includes researchers and conservationists and managers, park managers, that these battles are long drawn. So there are no quick solutions really. And so we need to stop looking for, push button solutions and look at long drawn out strategies that can actually sustainably solve the issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. It's 2 o'clock and we have short by half an hour, but I don't think anybody is fatigued as such because I can see everybody is engaged. We managed to engage about an average of 90 people throughout this 3 or 4 hours, both YouTube and Zoom combined, which is I feel is a very good audience number when it comes to addressing webinar, and it's a very pertinent topic as well. So with that, I'd like to end this first day of the session. 3 more days to go. As many of you would know, we'll be talking about tigers and leopards in the subsequent days. Today was all elephants, so we started with elephants, which is a good thing. And first of all, I'd like to thank everyone, all the speakers on behalf of WTI and all the organizers, to all the organizations who took out so much time, 3 to 4 hours of the day, and gave us very insightful information about the kind of work that they are doing, which we can learn, which others can learn, and hopefully together make a difference to the species. So I'd like to thank everyone. I'd also like to thank all the colleagues, all my colleagues from WTI who are monitoring the calls and taking the notes and everything so that it helps us with the last day wrap-up session. And thank you, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope you all be safe with Corona and everything. And as I mentioned, with feedbacks, if you have any feedbacks, comments, you want any information, you want to connect with somebody, you would like some resource material, you can, I have put on 2 emails, that is mine and Mayuk's, to start with, and you can write to us, and we'll be very happy to connect you guys with anybody you like. In addition, Dr. Prachi and the team have also put in their review document, the link to the review document, so you can have an access. Dr. Ananda Kumar also has put in the link of the project that they are doing, so they can look at it. This video will be available on WTI's YouTube channel. It will be there. So anybody wants to look at it again or anything particular, they can definitely look at it. Thank you, and have a very good day, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you.